Chapter 9:19. After the other party finished speaking, he handed over the two reports. The words, parent-child relationship, made Jing Yunzhao dumbfounded. She immediately snatched the reports and hurriedly flipped them open. For a moment, she didn't know what to do. This report, is there a mistake? Jing Yunzhao said with some suspicion. It can't be wrong. You're the only ones doing the appraisal in the middle of the night. Besides, our appraisal center doesn't allow fraud. We've never done any fraud or had any accidents ever since we were established. Due to Su Yuan's presence, the other party spoke very politely. Jing Yunzhao's hands trembled as she held the report. Looking at Su Xianlan's name, she felt dizzy. Su Xianlan was her biological mother. How could it be? From the time she met the old man, she had heard about Su Xianlan's deeds from time to time. However, she never thought that she was her daughter. She always thought that it was just a coincidence that they looked alike. Moreover, even the old man and Uncle Xing Yuan said that Li Tianyi never admitted that he had a child. Staring at the words on the last page, Jing Yunzhao's eyes reddened. She restrained herself. Su Yuantek next to her breathed a sigh of relief. When he looked at Jing Yunzhao again, his eyes were full of affection. Zhao, I'm your uncle. Su Yuantek reached out and touched her head. He sighed and his eyes were full of heartache. In the past, no one thought that Su Xianlan had a child. If they had thought a little more, they probably wouldn't have let her wander outside for so many years. Now, she was slim and elegant, and her personality was independent and strong. The Su family was just icing on the cake for her. Jing Yunzhao's body trembled. I want to calm down a bit. Jing Yunzhao took a few steps back and walked out with the report in her hand. It wasn't that she didn't want to know who her parents were. It was just that she didn't dare to know. In her previous life, when she was about to die, she even had some resentment. Why did her parents give birth to her but throw her away? They made her the daughter of the Qiao family. She worked for the Qiao family for the rest of her life and was humiliated and even ended up in prison. Now, she didn't resent why she had to suffer more than others. After all, being able to start over was already the greatest blessing that the heavens had given her. She now had friends and a career. Everything was developing according to her wishes. Even if her previous life's unwillingness and resentment appeared in her dreams, as long as she woke up, everything would be gone. But when she didn't have any hope for her biological parents, she actually found her biological mother. It was a joke. She was no longer the fatherless and motherless bastard that other people talked about, but her feelings were very complicated. At this moment, he suddenly understood why Xiao Haiqing still had a trace of softness towards Xiao Daoan even though she resented him for being her father. Indeed, the blood ties in the bones could not be deceived, and could not be deceived. So what if he found his biological mother? She wasn't here anymore. The woman she used to envy was her mother, but she didn't even have the chance to see her. In the past, she could still imagine that her parents were living a happy life, but at this moment, that fantasy was empty. Su Yuantek looked at her back and didn't chase after her. This was too sudden for her, and she really needed to wake up. And he also needed to report this to the old man. Once out of the appraisal center, Jing Yunzhao didn't know where to go. Her tightly clenched fists were still trembling. Her eyes were red and her face was pale. It was already early in the morning outside. The sun was shining, but the cold wind was a bit chilly. Jing Yunzhao only had a jacket on over her dress, which attracted the attention of the people at work. Chapter 9:20. Just as she was in a daze, she felt a weight on her shoulder. She turned her head and saw Li Xiaoyun standing beside her. He reached out and pulled her into his arms. Why are you here? Jing Yunzhao's voice was a little hoarse. Ah Zhao, this is a good thing. From now on, Elder Su is your biological grandfather. You're no longer alone. Li Xiaoyun looked into her eyes and said seriously. Jing Yunzhao's eyes softened. Yes, she had fantasized many times about how great it would be if Elder Su was her relative. You know. Jing Yunzhao exhaled and asked again. Yes. Li Xiaoyun responded. Feeling her cold hands, he immediately took her into the car. He was the one who told Jing Yunzhao the time of the business banquet. Of course, he knew what Su Yuantek would do if he saw her. Therefore, he had been waiting at the door of the identification center last night. When he saw her walk out in such a daze this morning, he immediately guessed the answer. In fact, he had thought about verifying her identity a long time ago. However, after thinking about it, it wasn't appropriate for an outsider like him to do this kind of thing. Moreover, he wanted Jing Yunzhao as a person. He didn't care if she really had any relationship with the Su family. Therefore, he didn't investigate. Jing Yunzhao immediately felt the surroundings warm up as soon as she got into the car. What do you think? I suddenly became the granddaughter of the old man. My biological mother is no longer around, and the person who could possibly be my biological father has never acknowledged my existence to the outside world. Jing Yunzhao's expressionless face flashed with a trace of sorrow. Li Xiaoyun knew in his heart that her tolerance wasn't weak. She just needed time to adapt. Ah Zhao, we'll continue to look for your mother in the future. There's still a long way to go. Whether she's alive or dead, there will be a result. Huaning County is only so big. At most, we'll turn it upside down. As for Li Tianyi, have you ever thought that he might have some difficulties? Li Tianyi is a good man. Maybe he doesn't acknowledge you because he's protecting you. Think about it, if he brings you or talks to his family when he returns to the capital, what will you do? You have the blood of the Su family, the Li family, and the Jing family. Li Xiaoyun reminded. Although the Su family would protect her, if she was brought back to the capital from a young age, she would naturally have to live with the Li family. The Li family would definitely not tolerate the existence of Jing Yunzhao, because the ancestors of the Su and Jing families were the same person. Her bloodline was like a ticking time bomb to the Li family. Jing Yunzhao wasn't stupid. His heart was filled with hope when he said that. However, as she held the report in her hand, she couldn't hold back her tears. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she forcefully restrained herself. There was happiness, but there was also disappointment. After 2 lifetimes of hard work, he finally found the reason. It was extremely complicated. If you want to cry, then cry. Come here, I'll give you a hug. Li Xiaoyun's eyes softened, and he put her hand on his waist. Jing Yunzhao's emotions were already on the verge of collapse. Hearing his words, she couldn't hold back her tears. She buried her head in his embrace, but she felt inexplicably at ease. In her previous life, she didn't like to cry. In fact, she rarely shed tears. When she was young, Yi Qin was biased and Father Chao was fierce. She once imitated Chao Hongya and cried for attention. However, even if she cried until her eyes were swollen, what greeted her was still the two people's indifferent gazes. Thus, slowly, she knew that her tears were useless. Even if she felt wronged, she could still bear it. However, in reality, it wasn't that she didn't think of venting her feelings once. It was just that after a long time, she had gotten used to it. Chapter 921. Jing Yunzhao wept silently. After a short while of releasing her emotions, she looked up and said, "Thank you." Finding her identity was always a good thing. She was sad about the time when she had no one to rely on and the fact that her biological mother did not exist. Her hand was still around Li Xiaoyun's waist. Her eyes were a little misty and red, which was particularly abrupt on her fair face. Seeing that she was about to withdraw her hand, Li Xiaoyun held it and was not prepared to let her escape. I can let you hug me for the whole day today, it doesn't matter. Jing Yunzhao blushed slightly. I'm fine. Jing Yunzhao said softly, but she had just cried. Her misty eyes looked like she was acting coquettishly. Hug me again. You haven't slept all night. Make up for it, Li Xiaoyun continued. Speaking of which, Jing Yunzhao was indeed a little tired. It wasn't physical exhaustion, but mental exhaustion. Perhaps it was because she hadn't vented in such a long time, but she felt a lot more comfortable at this moment. Her heart also felt more relaxed. Okay, then lend me your leg as a pillow, Jing Yunzhao said a little embarrassedly. She moved her body and laid her whole body on the back seat. She was thin and curled up on the seat. Li Xiaoyun reached out and covered her with his jacket. He tidied her hair and patted her body a few times. Is my head heavy? Jing Yunzhao asked softly. No. Li Xiaoyun pursed his lips. That's good. Jing Yunzhao closed her eyes and rested for a while. Xiaoyun, thank you for suddenly showing up today. Not only today, but at any time, whenever she needed him, he would be by her side like a protector. Okay. Li Xiaoyun chuckled. At least you have a conscience. Smelling the faint sandalwood scent on Li Xiaoyun's body, Jing Yunzhao's head became heavier and heavier. Soon, she fell asleep, but it was rare that she did not dream. In the past, when she slept, she would usually brew some flower tea for herself to help her sleep better. Otherwise, she would dream of her past life, of her being in prison, or of Qiao Weiman's wretched eyes staring at her and groping her. Li Xiaoyun looked at her rare smile and his gaze softened. He then rubbed his temples. His Zhao would have more people to love her in the future, but his life would not be so good. The old and young of the Su family were all smart people. Li Xiaoyun did not need to talk about the old man. He had used 2 or 3 years to get his approval. But in the future, there would be Su Yuantek and Su Wenqing. Su Yuantek used to be obsessed with his sister, but in the future, if he wanted to marry Zhao, he would have to go through Li Xiaoyun. It would be difficult. There was also Su Wenqing. Jing Yunzhao's second uncle was not to be trifled with. He was famous for being picky. When he thought about how Su Wenqing would pick on him in the future, he felt terrible. Fortunately, he did not have to worry about the Li family. Jing Yunzhao slept for a long time, even longer than before. When she woke up, the sky was already dark. Looking at the neon lights outside the window, she was a little dumbfounded. How long has it been? Jing Yunzhao was a little confused. It's 2 in the morning now. Li Xiaoyun's lips twitched. When Jing Yunzhao heard that, her eyes widened. 2 in the morning. Then I slept for almost 20 hours? Li Xiaoyun nodded. That's true, then, you've been in this position. Jing Yunzhao was suddenly very apologetic. Your legs must be sore, right? Staying in the same position for 20 hours, he would not be able to sleep even if he closed his eyes. Moreover, they were in the car. She probably did not eat or drink. Otherwise, she would definitely wake up if he moved. Chapter 922. Jing Yunzhao looked at Li Xiaoyun with mixed feelings. Thinking back, she seemed to have been too cold to this man. It's okay. I used to hide in one place for 2 or 3 days when I was doing missions, relying on dew to survive. Now that I have a beauty in my arms, it couldn't be better. Li Xiaoyun glanced at her, then smiled. But what delicious food did you see in your dream? You smacked your lips many times. I didn't dream. Jing Yunzhao was immediately embarrassed. But you were talking in your sleep. Li Xiaoyun raised his eyebrows and said nonsense seriously. Impossible, what did I say? Jing Yunzhao was a little guilty. She used to sleep about 4 or 5 hours a day, and the longest was 6 hours. But this time, she almost slept for a day and a night. She really didn't know if she was talking in her sleep. You said. Forget it, I don't want you to feel embarrassed. I won't tell you. Li Xiaoyun chuckled and said deliberately. After that, he got out of the car and went to the driver's seat. What did you say? Jing Yunzhao was a little curious. Well, it's a little straightforward. I'm a little embarrassed to hear it. Are you sure you want to hear it? Li Xiaoyun pursed his peach blossom eyes and shone with a teasing light. Jing Yunzhao pursed her lips. If it was in the past, she definitely wouldn't have believed it. But before she went to sleep, she was really grateful to Li Xiaoyun and was very moved. It was possible that her emotions were magnified when she was relaxed, then I don't want to know. She felt even more guilty. The two found a 24-hour restaurant to replenish their energy. Then, Li Xiaoyun sent her to Old Master Su's place. Before that, Li Xiaoyun had already sent a text message to Su Xingyuan. In order to not disturb Jing Yunzhao's rest, Old Master Su and the others resisted contacting him. Old Master Su didn't feel good when he found out the result. However, the fact that his daughter was no longer around had existed for many years. Now that he confirmed that his granddaughter was back, it was also a happy thing. Moreover, Jing Yunzhao had received his goodwill and had been mentally prepared for so long. Now, he felt that he could accept it. At this time, seeing Jing Yunzhao again, it was obvious that she was different from before. Old Master Su's cloudy eyes were also filled with tears. Compared to his previous seriousness, he was now more humane. Li Xiaoyun couldn't help but sigh when he saw Old Man Su like this. This grandfather and grandson were really the same. Even Jing Yunzhao was gentler than before. Su. Jing Yunzhao was just about to speak when he paused for 2 seconds, grandfather. Sigh. Jing Yunzhao was a little surprised by the old master's resounding reply. He then said, Girl, I've wronged you all these years. It's my fault. I should have recognized you earlier. Grandpa, I'm already satisfied, Jing Yunzhao said sincerely. She was no longer alone. She could also be filial to the old man legitimately and know that she was not born from a crack in a rock. Okay, Old Master Su said repeatedly. You've been away from home for so long, it's time to go back. Your first uncle will make some arrangements these 2 days, and your second uncle will also come back from abroad. When the time comes, we'll meet and talk about this meeting. The old man paused and suddenly snorted softly. I've already told them that you've been absent for 18 years, so those 2 fellows will have to compensate you for the past 18 years. No matter what valuable things they give you, you're not allowed to reject them. You have to take all of it. If it weren't for their connivance and concealment, allowing your mother to leave, you wouldn't have fallen to the outside world. Good girl, you don't have to be polite, and don't leave behind anything that should be compensated. Chapter 9:23. By the time the old man finished speaking, Jing Yunzhao was already sweating profusely. If she remembered correctly, the old man had always called her stinky brat. Wasn't his change in attitude a little too fast? But as for the 18-year gift, Jing Yunzhao was even more helpless. By the way, Grandpa, is second uncle married? She had always known a little more about Su Yuantek, but Su Wenqing rarely mentioned him. Him? Not yet. Your second uncle is very picky. He doesn't like ordinary women. Moreover, he only interacts with blonde women. The Su family's daughter-in-law can only be a domestic product. Even if he doesn't marry for the rest of his life, he can't bring back a foreign product, Grandpa Su said directly. Su Wencheng was in his early 30s. He wasn't very old, but he had achieved a lot. It was said that he ran a big company abroad and didn't lack money. Grandpa Su's temper was really bad. When Jing Yunzhao heard his words, she couldn't help but feel pity for her second uncle. However, Grandpa Su's request wasn't too much. Other than the country, he didn't ask for anything else. If a 1,000-year-old family like the Su family married a foreign daughter-in-law, it would mix up the bloodline, which wasn't very good. Moreover, Su Yuantek was in a high position, so the people around him should be as simple as possible. It was getting late, and Grandpa Su was also tired. After chatting for a while, he went to rest. Li Xiaoyun also left after sending Su Yuantek off. Jing Yunzhao thought about the scene during the day and felt a little sweet in her heart. At this time, some people in the Su family couldn't sleep. Shenxi tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. In the end, she sat up with a thwa sound, her head full of cold sweat. Jing Yunzhao was indeed Su Xianlon's daughter. This was great. There was no place for her in the Su family. In another 2 days, Jing Yunzhao would enter the house. Her husband had already started preparing a room for Jing Yunzhao today. He even wanted her to personally pick out some daily necessities. Not only that, he even wanted her to prepare a gift. Although it was her husband who paid for it, she felt uncomfortable at the thought of having to personally choose something to give to Jing Yunzhao. However, it was fortunate that Su Xianlon was dead. Otherwise, if the mother and daughter came back together, Shenxi would have no status to speak of. Looking at the moonlight outside the window, Shenxi bit her lip. She didn't know how her son was living abroad. The thought that he might be suffering at this moment made her hate him even more. Yu was the young master of the Su family, but her husband didn't care about him at all. He even treated his niece better than him. Why? Gnashing his teeth, he spent the entire night until dawn. Madam, you don't look too good. Are you feeling unwell? Early in the morning, the maid was concerned. I'm fine. Shenxi's expression was normal. She took the newspaper and looked at it. Her hand paused, and her eyes turned cold. On the top of the newspaper, there was a notice about the donation for the banquet the night before. There was also a large page dedicated to Yunling medicine. Madam, you've met the person in charge of Yunling medicine, right? After the news spread yesterday, many people knew about this company. Our neighbor's child had a bad cold, so he went to buy medicine from this company. The effect was quite good. The maid said. Madam was usually very gentle and was very polite to the maids. Therefore, they didn't fear her and mostly respected her. As for Yunling medicine, it was very famous now. With the official publicity, it naturally received a lot of support. Chapter 9:24. When Shenxi heard the servant praising Yunling medicine, she immediately lost her appetite. She had no interest in eating breakfast, so she directly asked the servant to take the food away. I have something to ask you. Su Yuantek came downstairs. When he saw Shenxi, his eyes darkened and he said. Shenxi felt uncomfortable, but she still had a gentle smile on her face. She walked up to him and asked, Honey, what's the matter? Do you have any conflicts with Zhao? Su Yuantek asked directly. No, I don't. Yun Zhao misunderstood me. She was shopping with my father-in-law before, and I happened to have a headache so I didn't see it. She thought I saw it, so she has some opinions about me. Don't worry. When Yun Zhao comes, I will continue to explain to her. Shenxi said with a smile. No matter whether you two really don't get along with each other, I just hope that you will do your part in the future. If you can't treat her like your own daughter, then be polite. Zhao has suffered a lot these years, and she is Xianlan's only child. So I don't want her to be unhappy in our family. Do you understand? Su Yuantek stared at her and said. When he said this, Shenxi's face became more and more stiff. I know. I will definitely treat Yun Zhao well. Shenxi lowered her head. By the way, you offended Zhao before, didn't he? That's why I won't let him come back for this family banquet. After a few days, after he finishes his training, you have to teach him in advance that he absolutely cannot be unruly in front of his younger sister. If I find out that Zhao has been wronged by you and your mother, he will move out of this house. Su Yuanze reminded again. Shenxi's body trembled, and she continued to nod. She looked generous, and she didn't forget to take care of Su Yuantek's breakfast. Su Yuantek was very busy, but he tried to spare a lot of time to buy things in person. The Su family was very big. Not only Jing Yunzhao occasionally came back to live, but also Old Master, Su Xingyuan, and Su Wenqing would move in the future. Jing Yunzhao didn't tell anyone about this matter for the time being. She didn't mean to hide it, but even she was still a little confused. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. It happened to be the weekend, so she didn't have to ask for leave. In the morning, Su Yuanze drove to a university to pick her up. I saw Jing leave in a car again today. This time the car was different, and it was a luxury car. But it was a middle-aged man. Who do you think it is? Baby Yao was curious. Of course, she didn't think that Jing Yunzhao had an improper relationship with that man. After all, they had known each other for a long time, so she knew Jing Yunzhao well. She just didn't understand why Jing Yunzhao was so mysterious. If you want to know, you can ask her when she comes back. She won't keep it a secret. Hua Tianxian knew Jing Yunzhao's temper, so she didn't care. Jing Yunzhao was dressed casually today. After all, it was her grandfather and uncle's home. She didn't feel the need to dress up. Otherwise, she would appear too polite. Zhao, don't be nervous when you get home. Uncle has prepared a room for you. You're welcome to come back anytime. I know that you offended you. When he comes back, I'll teach him a lesson and avenge you. If anyone has targeted you in the past, don't hesitate to tell me. The Su family will never be bullied. Su Yuantek said carefully in the car. I know, uncle. Jing Yunzhao nodded. She tried to be as calm as possible. However, she was used to being cold. She didn't care when she had a breakdown, but now that she had adjusted her state of mind, she still looked sensible and steady. She didn't seem like a little girl. Chapter 925. Su Yuantek glanced at Jing Yunzhao through the rearview mirror and secretly shook his head. This niece of his seemed to be a little too sensible. At such a young age, she exuded a feeling of vicissitudes of life. Her cold temper was unlike anyone else's. Grandfather Su was stubborn and arrogant, so naturally, he wasn't cold. He and his second brother were considered tactful, and needless to say, Xianlan and Li Tianyi were both docile people, but thinking of this, another person suddenly flashed in Su Yuan's mind. Jing Wenyue, Grandfather Su's junior sister. It was said that although she wasn't cold and arrogant, she was firm and independent and decisive. Jing Yunzhao was somewhat similar to her in some aspects. Not long after, the car slowly entered the Su family's territory. The Su family's house occupied a large area and had a history of more than 100 years. It was filled with an elegant and simple charm. The location wasn't remote, but the surrounding scenery was good. It was like a paradise. The house was divided into a main building and an auxiliary building. The two auxiliary buildings combined with the scenery looked particularly comfortable. However, when they went to the Su family's house, Jing Yunzhao saw a house with the same layout and scale as the Su family's nearby. But because they weren't close, they couldn't see it very clearly. "Eldest uncle, who owns the other house nearby?" Jing Yunzhao still asked. "That used to be the Jing family's old house. After the Li family took over, they moved to another place. Currently, there's no one there," Su Yuantek explained. In the past, the two families had a good relationship. Over the years, they tried to live together as much as possible. Jing Yunzhao nodded and didn't ask any more questions. The car passed through the dark forest and finally stopped in front of the Su family's villa. Jing Yunzhao got out of the car and entered the house. The Su family's servants were already waiting outside, standing neatly. In addition to those people, there was also Shen Shi, the old man, and a young man she had never seen before. The man had a smile on his face. He was dressed casually, and his eyes were bright under his sharp eyebrows. His facial features were handsome and elegant, but one look and one could tell that he was an extremely flamboyant and cunning man. This person should be her second uncle, Su Wenqing, whom she had never seen before. As soon as Jing Yunzhao got out of the car, Su Wenqing immediately walked over. He scanned Jing Yunzhao from head to toe, and his gaze stopped on her face as he said, "As expected, the blood of the Su family flows in your veins. Your temperament is indeed different." "Xiao Zhao, I'm your second uncle." "Second uncle," Jing Yunzhao greeted. Su Wenqing nodded and exchanged glances with Su Yuantek. Only then did he lead Jing Yunzhao into the house. Su Yuantek and Su Wenqing were somewhat similar, but the latter was much younger, so he had an air of arrogance. Su Yuantek, on the other hand, was relatively smoother. One was like a round polished jade, and the other was like a sharp weapon. It had to be said that Grandfather Su's two sons were very good. Jing Yunzhao passed by Shen Shi and glanced sideways at her. After 2 steps, she suddenly stopped. "Aunt Shen, I didn't drink the wine you asked Aunt Tong to give me. Later, I heard that you took it back. Today is the day I go home. Why don't you take out the bottle of wine and let me have a taste?" Jing Yunzhao said. The smile on Shen Shi's face froze when she heard the words, "Aunt Shen." "Yunzhao, logically speaking, I'm your aunt." Shen Shi said. "But I feel that Aunt Shen is more intimate." Jing Yunzhao seemed to be smiling gently, but it made people feel cold in their hearts. Shen Shi secretly exerted more force. The corners of her mouth twitched, and then she said, "Intimate is intimate, but it's a little against the rules." Chapter 9:26. Shen Shi cursed in her heart. Jing Yunzhao obviously knew that she cared about the position of the mayor's wife, so he deliberately called her Aunt Shen. If this form of address were to be heard by others, they might think that her position was unstable. "Uncle, I suddenly have too many relatives, and I can't accept it all at once. Can I call her Aunt Shen for the time being?" Jing Yunzhao looked directly at Su Yuantek. Previously, she didn't know that she was the granddaughter of the Su family, so Shen Shi's identity as Su Yuantek's wife was not a problem to her. But now, it was different. Su Yuantek was her uncle, and she would not allow such a woman to pollute the Su family. Although her niece was just an outsider, Shen Shi had attacked her many times. This hatred and resentment could not be resolved just because they became a family. Su Yuantek frowned slightly, thought for a moment, and rubbed Jing Yunzhao's head. "Just call her what you like." "Okay." Jing Yunzhao responded with a smile. Even though she was still polite, it still made Su Yuan's heart quite happy. He only heard Jing Yunzhao raise her eyebrows and ask, Auntie Shin, you don't have any objections now. Your uncle said so, so I have no objections. If you want to call her Aunt Shin, just call her Aunt Shin. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Shin, she laughed dryly. These words were nothing more than reminding Jing Yunzhao that her identity would not change because of Jing Yunzhao's address. Jing Yunzhao's eyes were cold as she entered the house. There was a hint of fragrance in the room. It was probably because someone had specially used incense to smoke the things in the house. The fragrance was light, elegant, and not too strong. It had the smell of green grass, making one feel comfortable. It could also be seen that the things in the room were almost new, and the colors were relatively bright, which made it feel warm. A group of people sat down, with Grandpa Shin in the middle. The servant first served a plate of fruit and tea. Zhao, in the future, you and Grandpa Shin will live in the main building. You, Aunt Shin, and I, will live in the side building on the left, and your uncle will live on the right. Of course, when you go home, you will come to the main building to eat together. Do you think that's okay? Su Yuantek asked. The house was big enough for the whole family to live in the main building. However, the old man liked peace and quiet, and the two brothers were busy people. They would have to entertain guests on a regular basis, so it was better for them to live separately. Fortunately, the main building and the side building were not far, so it was more suitable. Okay. Jing Yunzhao nodded. Su Yuantek put the key in Jing Yunzhao's hand. The Grandpa Shin said that you know how to make medicine. In the future, you can use it as you wish. I will prohibit other people from entering and leaving. In addition, there are several large storerooms in the backyard, in which there are medicinal herbs and seeds. If you lack anything, you can go there and get it. This is the key. The storeroom was a little different from the basement. There was a lot of wine and finished medicine in the basement, but they were not too expensive. Compared with those, the Su family cared more about the things in the storeroom, because there was no lack of rare medicinal herbs. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was the Grandpa Shin's lifeblood. In the whole Su family, only Grandpa Shin and Su Yuantek, who was in charge of the pharmacy, had the key. Usually, no one was allowed to go near it. Shin Shi had been in the Su family for so many years, but she had only entered the basement and the wine cellar. Thank you, uncle. Jing Yunzhao did not refuse and directly accepted it. If she did not have the blood of the Su family, it would be fine. But since she had half the blood of the Su family, she was qualified to inherit everything from Grandpa Shin. She was not ambitious, but when it came to making medicine, she could not tolerate those things being insulted by those who did not understand it. Of course, she was not referring to her two uncles, but the only grandson of the Su family, Su Yu. Chapter 927. Her grandfather was getting on in years, and her first and second uncles were in politics and business respectively. They did not have much interest in medicine making. There were only two juniors in the Su family, and that was her and Su Yu. In the end, only the two of them would bear the burden of the medicine room. She would not fight with Su Yu for anything else, but she would not give up the hard work of the old master and her ancestors. When Jing Yunzhao took the key, Shin Shi's heart almost stopped beating. When Su Yu was still young, she had encouraged her son to ask her husband about it, so she had a rough idea of what was in the medicine storage. Indeed, it was filled with medicinal herbs, but there were also some rare treasures that were passed down from their ancestors. The Su family had been making medicine for thousands of years, and their ability to collect medicinal herbs was also the best in the world. Whether it was flying in the sky or swimming in the sea, even pearls and gemstones, as long as it could be used in medicine, they would definitely have it. Shin Shi was about to go crazy with hatred. Those things belonged to the Su family. For so many years, she hadn't had any ideas about those things, mainly because the Su family only had one child, and that was her grandfather's eldest grandson. Even if the grandfather didn't like him, he would definitely inherit the family business in the future. Those things would naturally belong to her son. But now, this Qing Yao Jin had appeared out of nowhere. Jing Yunzhao. What right did he have? He was a little bastard born of a woman who eloped with another man. What right did he have to return to the Su family to fight for the inheritance? However, she could only think these thoughts in her heart. She didn't dare to say them out loud in front of her grandfather and everyone else. Little girl, the things in the medicine storage will be yours in the future. I'm old, and these things have been passed down for so many generations. It's time for the younger generation to guard them, her grandfather said again. His meaning was obvious. Grandfather, I'll keep these things for you for the time being. In the future, when my eldest and second uncles find a suitable successor who can take on the Su family's ability to make medicine, I'll return these things, Jing Yunzhao said. These words were even more straightforward. She directly told everyone that in her heart, her cousin Su Yu didn't have the ability to make medicine. Su Yu's personality wasn't suitable for it. The old man knew that if Jing Yunzhao was Li Tianyi's child, then her surname and bloodline were destined to involve the three families in the future. The Su family and the Jing family had a 1,000-year friendship, so he didn't want the Jing family to have no successors in the future. Therefore, he didn't say anything too definite. At least for now, he still had 2 sons. In the future, there might still be successors. However, he was afraid that he would be getting older and older by then, and he would definitely not be able to teach them well. Fortunately, he still had this granddaughter, who could help him when the time came. However, just like when Jing Wenyue took in a son-in-law, if Jing Yunzhao openly inherited the Jing family's reputation, then she also had the responsibility to carry on the Jing family's ancestral line. The Li family's status was not simple, so they might not agree, the old man sighed softly. This girl would have a lot of troubles in the future. Let's take it one step at a time. He had indeed thought too much about this matter. Jing Yunzhao openly accepted the key, but her 2 uncles looked satisfied. Xiao Zhao, I heard from Dad that you used to have adoptive parents, but they later broke off contact. What happened? Su Wenqing asked with an inquisitive look. I lived with my adoptive parents until I was 15. Later, my adoptive mother fell ill and died. I coincidentally found out that they weren't my biological parents. In addition, my adoptive father wasn't very reliable, so I broke off contact with them, Jing Yunzhao said casually, as if she had forgotten the hardships of the past. Su Wenqing heard this and knew that there was something fishy about it. However, since she didn't want to talk about it, he didn't ask too much. However, this matter was still easy to investigate. If he found out that the family didn't treat little Zhao well, humph. Chapter 928. Jing Yunzhao sighed in her heart. Even though she had only just met these 2 uncles, they were really good to her from the bottom of their hearts. It was impossible to pretend. Zhao, you just came home, so I don't have anything to give you. I went to the jade store to pick out these bracelets. Jade is good for people, so take them and play with them. After chatting for a while, Su Yuantek took out a box and handed it over. There was a pair of bracelets. They were purple in color and not very wide. They were also decorated with beautiful and anti-collision silver patterns on the outside. They looked different from the rest. Although she didn't know much about jade, she still had the memory of the spirit jade. Therefore, she knew that this violet jade was divided into several colors. The one in her hand should be expensive because its hue was uniform and high saturation. It wasn't like other purple jade bracelets that had a bit of red or blue or even different shades of blue. Jing Yunzhao's eyes flashed with surprise, but Su Wenqing had already said, "Big brother, you are so poor, but I didn't expect you to be so generous. This is royal purple, the best violet jade. Xiao Zhao is young, so the green color is a little old-fashioned. Purple is just right, and purple symbolizes good fortune and nobility. It has a good meaning, so it's not bad. Since you said it's not bad, then it seems that the things I chose are really good." Su Yuantek raised his eyebrows. His younger brother had been very picky since he was young. There were problems all over his body. Whether it was clothing, food, housing, or transportation, he was extremely strict, even to the people around him. Fortunately, they were living in separate buildings now. Otherwise, he would be annoyed to death by this brat. Today is Xiao Zhao's first day back. I will give her face and not be picky. Su Wenqing snorted and raised his hand to take out his gift. It was a document. Jing Yunzhao was a little suspicious. When she opened it, the corner of her mouth twitched. This is the share transfer contract of several companies in and out of our country. Xiao Zhao, you are my precious niece. You can lack anything, but you definitely won't lack money. Su Wenqing smiled arrogantly. Su Yuantek's face twitched and he rubbed his eyebrows. The Su family's assets belonged to old Master Su, so he wouldn't touch them. As for himself, he was still considered an honest and upright official, so naturally, he couldn't be compared to this kind of nouveau riche. Jing Yunzhao was dumbfounded. How did his assets increase so much in the blink of an eye? Zhao, don't worry about it. Back then, he was also in need of money, but the old man didn't care. It was I who took your mother's money to make up for it. Otherwise, where would he get the ability he has today? Su Yuantek directly attacked. Jing Yunzhao picked up the information and looked at it. Su Wenqing's businesses were all over the world, including the technology development industry, real estate, food, and so on. It was simply a big group. What her second uncle gave her was a portion of the shares. He was only responsible for getting the money and didn't need her to manage it. However, it was a little troublesome for her. Although first uncle's greeting gift was expensive, it was just an object. However, the shares of the company were different. The gift was too big. Second uncle didn't have a family now, but what if he did in the future? At that time, this niece of hers would be a little too ostentatious. Although old Master Su asked her to keep it, she could rely on herself if she lacked money. Second uncle, I won't sign this contract. I don't lack money. Moreover, if I lack money, I will earn it myself. If I don't work hard for it, I won't feel at ease holding it. Jing Yunzhao pushed the document back. When she said this, Su Yuantek's lips curled up. He was already so old, but he was gloating. Su Wenqing was stunned. Was he being despised? Chapter 929. Su Yuanqing's movement stiffened. Feeling his elder brother's mocking gaze, he immediately glared back. Xiao Zhao, as elder brother said, part of the money I used to start the company was left by my sister, so naturally, it's yours. It's natural for you to take these shares. You don't have to feel pressured. Yuanqing, I thought you would take out something good. So it's just shares. Although they're valuable, you can't do anything if Xiao doesn't accept them. Besides, do you think you're the only one who knows how to start a company and make money? Do you know what her identity was when I first met her? Su Yuantek laughed and said proudly. His younger brother had been proud since he was young. When he was young, he studied better than others. He ate better than others. When he made money, he had higher expectations. As time passed, he became more and more like a local tycoon. What identity? Su Wenqing was stunned for a moment. He shifted his body and sat up straight. Hee, although you started your business when you were in university, you're still not as good as Zhao. She's now the chairman of Yunling Medicine. This company is amazing. The military is backing her. The first batch of medicine for Yunling Medicine was ordered by the military. If you want to compare money, when she reaches your age, her achievements will be many times more than yours. Su Yuantek took a sip of tea. His face was glowing. When he didn't know who the owner of Yunling Medicine was, he was worried that someone was using the military's name to do something improper. This medicine was related to the people's livelihood. If something went wrong, it would be very serious. However, now that he knew it was Jing Yunzhao, he was relieved. If she tampered with the medicine, the old master would be the first to disagree. Therefore, it was impossible. When Su Wanqing heard this, he was indeed shocked. He looked at Jing Yunzhao with a strange expression. This niece of his seemed to be a little abnormal. He started his business from scratch. Naturally, he knew how hard it was. Ordinary people couldn't do this. Moreover, he took a lot of convenient paths in the past. After all, he was a member of the Su family. He had ready-made connections in all aspects and sufficient capital to start his business. He didn't have to worry about failure at all. However, how could Jing Yunzhao be the same? She had led a wandering life since she was a child. Although she had the protection of the old master for the past 2 years, the old master had concealed his identity and lived a peaceful life. In this aspect, he could not help her at all. Originally, he had treated his niece as a child. He felt that a little girl should be doted on. Now, he had to think of a way to compensate her for the suffering she had suffered over the past 10 years. But looking at it now, this niece had already become an adult and they, the elders, seemed to have come a little late. However, at this moment, he liked this cold and indifferent niece even more. She was simply a treasure. Forget it. I'll just take it that I made the wrong decision this time, Su Wanqing said. After that, he felt the old man's burning gaze and felt guilty. He thought for a moment and took out a car key. This is the car I just bought. I just shipped it back to China. You're almost an adult, so it's suitable for you to drive. He had just bought this car because he was very fond of it. It was a limited edition car with only 20 cars in the world. He had done everything he could to get his hands on it. Money wasn't a problem. The problem was that he couldn't buy this car with money. This car cost more than 20 million. It was brand new, and he hadn't even had the time to drive it. Jing Yunzhao didn't think too much about it. She had just rejected the shares. It wouldn't be good if she opened her mouth to reject it now. After thinking about it, she nodded and kept it. As the eldest, Su Yuantek naturally knew what kind of car it was. When he saw his younger brother's deflated face, he was in a good mood. The other gifts are in your room. Go back and take your time to look at them. It's late now. Let's eat. Chapter 930. After chatting for so long, Jing Yunzhao was indeed hungry. However, before eating, Jing Yunzhao went upstairs to take a look at her room. The room was very big, but it was filled with gifts. She was stunned. It was almost stuffed with plush dolls. In addition, there were all kinds of skincare products, branded bags, shoes, clothes, jewelry. Looking at the situation, she probably wouldn't need to buy new things for many years to come. She was shocked and touched at the same time. Although she might not like all the things here, they were gifts from her family. It meant a lot. When she was in the Qiao family, she had seen Qiao Hongye receiving gifts many times. Only now did she realize that it was indeed a happy feeling. How is it? Do you like everything? Su Wanqing walked up and rubbed Jing Yunzhao's head. These two uncles seemed to have a special fondness for her head. The two of them had rubbed it a few times. I like it. Thank you, uncle, Jing Yunzhao said. It's a pity that you've grown up. Otherwise, uncle can give you more things. Su Wanqing felt that it was a pity. He really wanted to see what this niece looked like when she was young. Looking at her serious appearance, she must have been a little pink dumpling who knew how to act cool when she was young. She must have been very cute. Second uncle can give birth to one himself. Jing Yunzhao smiled. How can it be the same as you? Oh right, do you have pictures of your childhood? Let me see if you were beautiful when you were young. Su Wanqing said. Pictures. Jing Yunzhao shook her head. She didn't have such things. However, after her rebirth, she took some pictures. Most of them were taken when she was teaching Shao Haiqing and the others martial arts. The rest were taken when she was training at the military training base. When I was young, I wasn't good looking. The neighbors would say that I was a silly girl. My hair was yellow, my complexion wasn't good, and I was very skinny. If uncle saw me, he would definitely be very disappointed. Jing Yunzhao was telling the truth. She was only praised for her beauty after she was reborn. With the space, her skin turned from sallow to fair, and her body became slightly more fleshy, which made her look a little more normal. Su Wanqing frowned slightly. When Jing Yunzhao was about to go downstairs, he grabbed her arm and said, Xiao Zhao, how much have you suffered in the past? Did that family bully you? Uncle can avenge you. Second uncle, it's been a long time. You may not know, but after my adoptive mother passed away, the family situation became worse and worse. In the end, the younger sister of the family lost her reputation and ran away with the money. My adoptive father fell into a deep ditch because he was chasing after the money, and his legs were crippled. Now, even living is a problem. Jing Yunzhao smiled brightly. In other words, she had already stood up for him. Is that so? Su Wanqing loosened his grip. Is it your doing? If there is, I can only say, well done. Su Wanqing suddenly smiled and gave her a thumbs up. As he said this, he reached out to grab Jing Yunzhao's shoulder and went downstairs. He earnestly lectured, if you're bullied, you have to fight back like this. However, don't be so loud that others can use it against you. Learn more sinister moves, just like how you hit people. What's the use of stupidly hitting the stomach and butt? If you want to hit someone, then poke their eyes, dig their nose, and kick them down the road. Once these three moves are used, regardless of whether they're a man or a woman, I guarantee that they'll immediately surrender. It doesn't matter if you learn bad things. No matter how bad you are, you're still much better than that brat Su Yu. Uncle will always side with you, haha. The corner of Jing Yunzhao's mouth twitched. She seemed to have discovered this second uncle's amazing side. Uncle, when you hit people, you use these three moves. Jing Yunzhao pursed her lips and smiled. After we finish eating, Uncle will teach you some self-defense skills. Our Xiao Zhao is so beautiful, how can you not know how to protect yourself? Su Wanqing continued to ramble on, his face full of confidence. Chapter 931. When Jing Yunzhao heard that he wanted to teach him self-defense, he immediately smiled. He thought about it and didn't tell the truth. Okay, I'll practice with Uncle later. But Uncle, I'm strong. If I hurt you or bump into you, you won't blame me, right? When he said this, Su Wanqing immediately glared at him. Am I such a petty person? Besides, how can you hurt me with your small arms and legs? Su Wanqing smiled and said, our Su family has a set of health-preserving moves. Your grandfather and eldest uncle also know how to use this move. If you practice it for a long time, not only can it strengthen your body, but it can also protect yourself. Although it's a little difficult to deal with a martial artist, it's definitely not a problem for 2 or 3 ordinary people. Jing Yunzhao nodded. His eyes shone brightly and the corners of his mouth were slightly pursed with a smile, looking somewhat mysterious. Su Wenqing didn't care. He patted her shoulder and went downstairs to eat. This was Jing Yunzhao's first meal after he was acknowledged by his family. Naturally, it was very sumptuous. The old man sat at the head of the table, with Su Xingyuan and Jing Yunzhao on his left and right respectively. The 2 biological sons, Su Yuantek and Su Wenqing, sat at the back. However, it wasn't difficult to understand. Su Xingyuan was not only the old man's disciple, but he was more than his biological son. He was filial and loyal. No matter when and where, he would follow the old man's wishes. Others simply couldn't be like him. At the dinner table, it was a happy and harmonious atmosphere. She sat next to Su Yuantek and looked at the doted Jing Yunzhao with a stiff smile. Sure enough, she should have dealt with her before she returned to the Jing family. Now, she was in a passive position and couldn't do anything to her in front of so many people. But to let her watch Jing Yunzhao enjoy everything that belonged to her son, she couldn't do it. Yuanzi, if Yu finds out that he has a cousin, he will be very happy. Do you want to? She asked tentatively. Zhao, is this dish to your liking? Su Yuantek asked Jing Yunzhao casually as if he didn't hear him. Not bad. Jing Yunzhao nodded. He looked at Shi and said, Aunt Shen, where is the bottle of wine you wanted to give me? She paused. You mean that bottle of flower wine? When I brought it back, I accidentally dropped it. How about this, Yunzhao, if you want to drink, I will ask someone to go to the wine cellar and get a bottle of other wine. We have a lot of new fruit wine at home, and the taste is very good. She quickly smiled and said. Of course, she had already destroyed the bottle of poisoned wine. Could it be that she wanted to keep it as evidence? Aunt Shen, you are too careless. Jing Yunzhao said casually. He picked up some vegetables for the old man and continued, although I am young, I also know that things that have been given out are like water that has been spilled. According to reason, you shouldn't ask for it back. By the way, fortunately, we didn't drink this bottle of wine at that time. Otherwise, if Aunt Shen regretted it, we wouldn't be able to return it. Yunzhao, what are you talking about? I knew that you didn't drink it, so I asked for it back. I didn't feel embarrassed when I asked my sister. If it were you girls, I definitely wouldn't have done so. At this point, Shi suddenly understood why Jing Yunzhao was so against her. She had been with the old man for so long, so her pharmaceutical skills were definitely not low. She mentioned the wine so many times because she found out that the things she gave out were poisoned, and it wasn't just because of that one time at the mall. If that was the case, she was afraid that she couldn't casually make a move in the future. If Jing Yunzhao had real evidence, she would naturally not be able to stay in the Su family. Chapter 932. Shi's mind was full of twists and turns. She thought of many things in a few seconds. After a while, her eyes suddenly became particularly gentle and kind, as if she really loved Jing Yunzhao. Hubby, I just thought about it. Yunzhao's birthday is coming soon, right? Why don't we hold a banquet and invite her friends and classmates to gather? What do you think? She asked. No one knew when Jing Yunzhao's birthday was, but it was less than a month before Jing Yunzhao's 18th birthday, which happened to be during the winter vacation. Zhao, I think your Aunt Shen's idea is good. What do you think? Su Yuantek nodded in agreement and asked Jing Yunzhao. Jing Yunzhao was a little suspicious. She suddenly seemed to have some changes, but he didn't know the reason. I think it's settled. Little girl, invite your friends and classmates to come over and make it more lively. Before Jing Yunzhao could speak, the old man had already finalized the matter. Jing Yunzhao thought for a while and nodded. After all, recognizing relatives was a joyous event. Naturally, it was best for everyone to know about it. But Dad, once the birthday banquet is held, I'm afraid that the Li family will also know. Su Yuantek reminded. It was unknown whether Jing Yunzhao had Li Tianyi's blood flowing in her body, but it was certainly 80 or 90%. Once the Li family knew about her existence, it might not be a good attitude, especially when Jing Yunzhao coincidentally had the surname Jing, which would make the Li family even more unhappy. So what if they know? This girl is my granddaughter. Even if she is Li Wenbao's granddaughter, Li Wenbao can't control her just because of her surname. That old thing has slept soundly for so many years. It's time for him to have some nightmares. The old man snorted and his temper suddenly rose. By the way, Xiao Zhao, was your name given by your adoptive parents? Su Wenqing asked. I heard that my adoptive mother asked a fortune teller to give it to me. The surname was given from the jade token on my body. Jing Yunzhao answered truthfully. This jade token looked very old and dim. No matter how you looked at it, it looked fake. Because of this, the Qiao family didn't shift their attention to the jade token. Otherwise, it would have been sold long ago. Where's the jade token? Is this the one you wear around your neck? The old man pointed at her collar and asked. He had long seen Jing Yunzhao wearing something, but he never cared. Usually, he couldn't see it with her clothes. Jing Yunzhao took out the jade pendant from her clothes. When the old man saw it, he suddenly laughed. This is fate. Little girl, look at this jade token. Grandfather. Jing Yunzhao didn't understand the old man's attitude. There were originally 2 jade tokens, one for the Su family and one for the Su family. They weren't a pair, but they were a symbol passed down from generation to generation. Each family's surname was engraved on it. However, our Su family's jade token was smashed several hundred years ago. It is said that after the jade token was smashed, several generations of the Su family didn't live long. Moreover, they didn't have many descendants. Therefore, the jade token is very important to the Jing family. The previous generation mentioned that this jade token will only recognize the Su and Jing families as its owners. Even if an outsider obtains it, it won't last long. Our ancestors also said that if a person with great luck carries this jade token, he will be able to transform into a dragon. He will be able to revitalize the family and revitalize medical knowledge. However, regarding this luck, over the years, no one has been able to understand it. They just treated it as a rumor. Now it seems. The old man glanced at Jing Yunzhao and smiled. Chapter 933. The old man's words startled Jing Yunzhao. She suddenly remembered the scene when she first entered the space. Her luck was probably referring to her rebirth. After all, there were very few people in the world who could be as lucky as her. At this time, the old man was overjoyed, but there were still some things in his heart that he didn't say. The advantages of Jing Yunzhao's surname were great. With the Su family as her backing, if she really faced the Li family in the future, her chances of winning would be higher. Even if Jing Yunzhao didn't say anything, there would be people who were once loyal to the Jing family who would take the initiative to do things for her. Since the old man was happy, Jing Yunzhao's mood was naturally good as well. She stuffed the jade tablet back. After the meal, she became more familiar with her 2 uncles. After all, blood was thicker than water. Jing Yunzhao quickly integrated with them. Xiao Xiao, come here. I'll teach you. After the meal, Su Wenqing didn't forget his promise to Jing Yunzhao. He stood in the courtyard and waved at her. Jing Yunzhao blushed with shame. Looking at her second uncle's excited appearance, she really didn't want to tell the truth. Moreover, even if she said it, her second uncle would definitely not believe her. As soon as Jing Yunzhao approached, Su Wenqing immediately pulled her over. Xiao Xiao, your body is so thin. You can't use brute force in a fight, but you can't just focus on scratching either. You have to learn how to use both. Su Wenqing seriously continued, for example, if someone covers your mouth and nose from behind, don't panic, you're a girl, so you can't escape with your fists. I'll teach you a few moves. First, bend the fingers against the opponent's joints. Use as much strength as you can and don't be soft. Second, if you can see the opponent's feet, you can kick their toes. Third, if your body size is too different from the opponent's and you can't grab their hair or neck, use your elbow. Su Wenqing's explanation seemed to be very reasonable. Jing Yunzhao listened and couldn't help but want to laugh. These seemed to be shameless moves. If it were her, not to mention that the possibility of being ambushed from behind was very small, even if her mouth and nose were covered, she only needed to grab the other party's arm and throw them to the ground. However, it had to be said that the methods he mentioned might have some effect on ordinary people. It was a pity that he neglected one possibility, and that was whether the other party would be carrying a sharp weapon while covering their mouths and noses. Later, I'll ask Big Brother to prepare a few bodyguards for you. But as the saying goes, it's better to rely on yourself than on others. First, learn a few moves from me. If you can withstand it, Uncle will send you to a proper martial arts school. Su Wenqing continued to speak, and did not forget to remind him of the moves. Jing Yunzhao shook his head. Alright, let's practice the actual combat. After a while, Su Wenqing began to urge again. After saying that, he stood behind Jing Yunzhao and pressed his hand against her mouth and nose. Jing Yunzhao felt a little helpless. Uncle, are we really going to do it? Of course. Don't worry, Uncle is a big man. You've just learned, so this little strength can't hurt me. Su Wenqing smiled, looking particularly generous. Jing Yunzhao really didn't know how he founded the company. On the surface, although he looked like a man who was vigorous and resolute, in private, he was actually so unreliable. Alright, Uncle, you should be mentally prepared. Jing Yunzhao kindly reminded him. Su Wenqing didn't take it to heart at all. Although he was teaching his niece self-defense skills, in fact, he just wanted to be more familiar with her, so that this little girl wouldn't be cold when she saw him. It wasn't good to be too polite to family members. Chapter 934. Su Wenqing steadied himself and increased the strength in his hands. Jing Yunzhao glanced to the side and glanced at his arm. In the next second, she took a step forward and grabbed his arm. She spun him 180 degrees and threw him in front of her. With a bang, the greenery on the lawn withered a little under the pressure. Su Wenqing's back was facing the lawn and he felt his entire back go numb. He gritted his teeth and supported his waist as he climbed up from the ground. He said, Xiao Xiao, your strength is great. It's more useful than what I taught you. On the side, Su Xingyuan looked at Su Wenqing with disdain. Teaching martial arts. He really didn't know who was teaching who. This second young master was too indecent. He was like this in the past. He looked steady and mature on the outside, but as soon as he got home, he would start messing around. Uncle, does it hurt? Jing Yunzhao's eyes sparkled. She couldn't help but smile, revealing a row of small white teeth. It doesn't hurt, it doesn't hurt. Again, this move is better. Practice more. Su Wenqing dusted his clothes. He was already 30 years old, but he still looked like a big boy. Uncle, forget it. I know martial arts. I don't need to be taught at all. Jing Yunzhao spoke the truth. How could Su Wenqing believe her? His niece was only 18 years old. It was already very impressive that she could run a company. Moreover, she was learning medicine from the old man. If she also knew martial arts, wouldn't she be a monster? Even if she was a genius, it was impossible for her to be so abnormal. Moreover, who did she learn martial arts from in that small county? The old man didn't have the ability to teach her. You know martial arts. Okay, uncle will spar with you. Su Wenqing said dotingly. Jing Yunzhao shook her head. Don't spar with me. I'll really hurt you. What she learned were all fierce moves that could suppress people. They were orthodox martial arts, not the flowery moves of today. You're really not modest. Su Wenqing couldn't help but laugh. He took off his jacket and threw it aside. He opened his hand and struck a pose. He looked very handsome. Su Wenqing did know some martial arts, but he wasn't very skilled. Fortunately, he had the looks, and his aura wasn't weak. When he got serious, he looked a little murderous. Yuanqing, if you can't even win against Zhao, go on a blind date tomorrow. If you win, I won't care about you in the future. What do you think? Su Yuantek stood at the side and spoke without feeling any pain. Although he didn't know what Jing Yunzhao was capable of, he had noticed the look in Su Xingyuan's eyes. He had lived for many more years than his younger brother, so he definitely understood Su Xingyuan's facial expressions better. Xiao Zhao, did you hear that? Su Wenqing didn't care at all. Jing Yunzhao smiled. Second uncle, you're already so old. It's time for you to find someone. So, don't be sad if you lose. I'm just thinking for you. Second uncle was picky and couldn't stand women. It was time to change. Otherwise, wouldn't this male chauvinist have to be single for the rest of his life? Su Wenqing was even happier in his heart. Seeing Jing Yunzhao's confident look, he took the initiative to step forward. However, he didn't dare to move too much and held back his strength. Bang. However, in less than a second, his whole body fell to the ground again. Su Wenqing was stunned. Wait, I went easy on you just now. Let's do it again. This time, he used 80% of his strength. He lifted his leg and swept it over. However, just like before, he didn't see how Jing Yunzhao attacked. He ate a mouthful of mud and instantly felt terrible. Su Wenqing loved cleanliness very much. At this time, he only felt that every pore on his body was about to explode. He almost jumped up from the ground and looked at Jing Yunzhao suspiciously. He thought for a while and said, let's do it again, but... Xiao Zhao, slow down. Su Wenqing's eyes were serious and he felt very guilty. Chapter 935. When Su Yuantek saw Su Wenqing's cowardly appearance, he instantly burst into laughter. He pointed at him and gloated, Zhao, your second uncle is in good health. You don't have to be merciful. Hit him a few more times to teach him a lesson. Let's see if he dares to look down on you again in the future. Speaking of his younger brother, Su Yuantek was also full of joy at this time. Instead of calling him his younger brother, this kid was more like his son. When he was young, he was very obedient and followed him and Xianlong all day long. However, ever since Xianlong disappeared, his temperament changed completely. Every time at home, he would be a little sloppy. He was picky and dissatisfied with everything. He also began to learn to scheme against him. However, it wasn't until today that he seemed to feel that the real Su Wanqing had returned. This younger brother should feel even more guilty towards Xianlan. Originally, he didn't agree to let Xianlan and Li Tianyi leave. However, Yuanqing liked Li Tianyi very much and kept pleading for him. He even pretended to know nothing in front of the old man. At that time, this younger brother had always been a little proud in his heart. He felt that he had helped his sister achieve happiness. It wasn't until he never saw Xianlan again, and until the old man blamed him and his brother for his resentment, that the younger brother felt that he had done something wrong. The appearance of Jing Yunzhao was like a savior to this younger brother. Otherwise, he was sure that he would never be able to see Su Wanqing smile like this at this time. At this moment, Su Wanqing looked as if he had seen a ghost. He continued to move forward recklessly. Jing Yunzhao casually threw him to the ground. He looked at Jing Yunzhao with shock and pride. "Who did you learn martial arts from?" Although Su Wanqing fell miserably, he didn't feel ashamed. "Before I met Grandpa, I had a master who taught me medical skills, martial arts, and medicine. However, my master is no longer here," Jing Yunzhao said. She had promised the old ancestor in the space that she would never reveal the existence of the space. No matter who it was, she would keep her promise. Moreover, she remembered that the ancestor had said that anyone who could enter the space would definitely have the blood of the Jing family flowing through their veins. Therefore, she should be Li Tianyi's daughter without a doubt. Since this jade was a family heirloom, it would naturally be the same in the future. It would be passed down from generation to generation. Perhaps she could even meet a descendant of the Jing family with heaven-defying luck. Su Wanqing was a little surprised. "You're lucky to have met a legendary expert." It was like the plot of a television show. However, although luck was one aspect, the most important thing should still be character. If it was Su Yu, even if there was a hermit expert, it would still be impossible for him to become a talent. At this time, Jing Yunzhao had changed from being the one being taught to second uncle's little master. Instead, she had given him pointers for quite a while. Since it was the weekend, Jing Yunzhao decided to stay at home as well. The atmosphere made her feel like she was in a dream. Of course, as long as she saw Shinshi, Jing Yunzhao would wake up a lot. However, she didn't know if Shinshi's brain was damaged, but she seemed to suddenly become very reasonable. She was even more concerned about her, especially in front of the whole family. There was no evidence for the poisoning at that time. Otherwise, Jing Yunzhao wouldn't have concealed it. At noon the next day, the old man took a nap. Su Yuantek had official business to attend to, and Su Wanqing was willing to accept his loss and go on a blind date. Shinshi unexpectedly came to the main building again. "Yunzhao, come and try the afternoon tea made by Aunt. Also, these snacks were all made by me," Shinshi politely said while holding a plate of things. If it weren't for the past reminding her, Jing Yunzhao would even have the illusion that she had a good relationship with Shinshi. Chapter 936. Shinshi put down the things and even personally brought the teacup to Jing Yunzhao. The tea was fragrant, and there was nothing wrong with it. The same went for the desserts. Everything was normal. This was the Su family. Shinshi wouldn't be so stupid as to use poison again. "Aunt Shin, you're so thoughtful. I thought you would have something to ask of me." Jing Yunzhao's expression was normal. "You're just a child. Why would I ask you for anything?" Shinshi laughed. "But I do have something to ask your opinion about. For the birthday party, do you want to go to the hotel or do you want to have it in our house? I think our place is big enough. It's more magnificent than a hotel. The scenery is good, so everything is suitable. Although it's a bit troublesome, it's definitely more meaningful. What do you think?" "Okay." Jing Yunzhao nodded. That's good. Also, here are a few types of cakes. See if there's anything you like. Oh right, there's also the clothes. When the time comes, you have to prepare the gown you'll be wearing. Yunzhao, you're so good-looking, much better than the daughters of other rich families. There are many styles you can wear. Shenxi did not forget to praise her. This hypocritical look was as if she had been possessed. It came inexplicably. However, it had to be said that Shenxi's acting skills seemed to be better than her sister's. Even her eyes were full of love. Coupled with her amiable face, she was simply impeccable. Aunt Shen, how about I tell you something? Jing Yunzhao put down the things in her hands and said coldly. Okay, Yunzhao. Aunt is listening. Shenxi was still full of smiles. When I first came to the capital, there was a time when I was on a bus and the driver injected a dangerous drug into my car. Luckily, I reacted quickly and controlled it, otherwise the consequences would have been unimaginable. Do you think this is just a coincidence? Jing Yunzhao revealed a cold smile. She couldn't figure it out before. She had encountered a lot of danger, and it was never for no reason. At that time, she clearly felt danger, but she didn't know where the danger came from. However, after Shenxi appeared, she had an intuition. Yunzhao, have you ever encountered such a thing? Shenxi was surprised and worried. You must have been scared at that time, right? Go back and tell your uncle to give that bus driver a warning. How did Auntie Shen know that it was a bus? Jing Yunzhao suddenly narrowed his eyes. Didn't you say you were injected with drugs? It's just that there are too many people on the bus. Shenxi explained naturally. But I didn't say that the drug acted up immediately. Moreover, they only said that the driver was injected with dangerous drugs. They didn't say that he was injected by someone. Aunt Shen, how can you guess so accurately? Jing Yunzhao said with a faint smile. Shenxi sighed. Yunzhao, do you think Auntie Shen is a bad person? Auntie knows that you've suffered all these years. Auntie won't look down on you because of this and think that you're a wild girl. Auntie only has one child, your cousin, and I don't have a daughter. Now that I have you, I'll treat you like my own daughter. By the way, your mother and I were as close as sisters back then. Even if it's just for your mother's sake, I'll still treat you well. Shenxi said sincerely. If she hadn't doubted this woman before, she would have been touched. However, once she had set her mind on something, it was not difficult to change her mind. Auntie Shen, if you could replace Auntie Tong in the entertainment circle, you would have won several awards now. Jing Yunzhao said with a smile. Behind the smile, there was a coldness that made people feel cold. Chapter 937. Jing Yunzhao's words were obviously sarcastic, but Shenxi didn't seem to hear it. She was still smiling very kindly. Really? But I'm not as lucky as your Aunt Tong. At that time, there were no famous directors who liked me. Besides, the entertainment circle is too complicated. It's not suitable for people like me. Shenxi smiled. Jing Yunzhao suddenly smiled and looked at Shenxi with sarcasm. Shenxi didn't give in. Her eyes were calm, and people couldn't find any flaws. In fact, it wasn't as if there wasn't a quick way to deal with Shenxi. Grandfather Shen and her two uncles doted on her very much, so she could completely push the blame to Shenxi. When the time came, even if her uncles knew that Shenxi was wrongly accused, they might still choose to chase Shenxi out of the family. After all, Shenxi and her uncle's relationship didn't seem as deep as it was rumored to be. But this method didn't suit her. What she wanted was real evidence, not to consume the feelings of her family and take advantage of their trust. There was still a long time in the future. The person who should be anxious was definitely not her. Sooner or later, Shenxi would show her foxtail. Jing Yunzhao spent the weekend at home peacefully. On the surface, it seemed that nothing had happened. The winter vacation was coming. Jing Yunzhao began to be busy with various exams. But she was good in all aspects, so she didn't have to worry about failing. She even scored well in every subject, so people still looked up to her. Maybe there were some people who were jealous of her at first, but after getting along with her for half a year, all the jealousy disappeared. After all, the gap between Jing Yunzhao and them was too big. Jealousy couldn't express that kind of untouchable emotion. On this day of the vacation, there was a bit of reluctance in the dormitory. Yao Baobao was a foreigner, so she naturally wouldn't stay in Jingdu. She definitely wouldn't be able to attend Jing Yunzhao's birthday party. She couldn't help but feel that it was a pity. I'm leaving. You have to miss me. Great Immortal, you have to leave me a share of whatever good stuff you have. Otherwise, I won't let you off. Also, Jingjing, you have to mention my name in front of Heidi often. It wasn't easy for him to learn to call me Bao Bao. Xingxing, you too. You have to call me every day. Yao Bao Bao packed her luggage and began to pout. Her temperament hadn't changed at all, but her ability to take care of herself had improved a lot. At the very least, she could do an excellent job of organizing the house. All right, we got it. I promise that as long as there's someone else's share, there's also yours. We'll give you a share of everything delicious and fun. It's only been a month. You don't have to be so mushy, do you? Hua Tianxian shook her head speechlessly. Among the few of them, Baby Yao was the best at acting coquettishly. However, it had to be said that she had improved the atmosphere in the dormitory to a certain extent. As for Ren Xingyue, she was the one with the lowest sense of presence. However, she often saw things very clearly. It was just that she didn't like to talk much. Jing Yunzhao and the other two expressed their concern. Only then did Baby Yao feel a little satisfied. She stared at Heidi and refused to let go. Jingjing, why don't you let Heidi live with me for a month? The three of you can get together often, but I can't. After I get home, Dad, Mom, and Brother definitely won't let me go out. However, as soon as Baby Yao finished speaking, Heidi immediately jumped onto Jing Yunzhao's shoulder. He grabbed onto her clothes with his claws and leaned against the side of her neck. He had an attitude that said he wasn't willing to be abducted. Everyone was already used to Heidi's behavior. You saw it too. He's unwilling. Jing Yunzhao spread her hands helplessly. Chapter 938. Heidi stuck close to Jing Yunzhao and didn't even look at Yao Baobao. His arrogance made Yao Baobao speechless. She pointed at Heidi and said angrily, "You little heartless brat. Who took care of you when Jing Jing wasn't around? Let me remind you that Heidi is very smart. If you scold him like this, he might forget who you are when you come back." Hua Tianxian was gloating. Yao Baobao was speechless after hearing this. When I go back, I'll ask my brother to find me a pet in the dormitory. Yao Baobao pouted. Your pet might only be close to Jing Air. Hua Tianxian continued to attack. No, it's mine. Let's talk about it after you have it. The two of them often bickered, and Jing Yunzhao was used to it. He ignored them and started to pack his things. Not long after, Yao Baobao went out. Mother Yao came downstairs to pick her up. Ren Xingyue was the slowest to pack among them. She was disinterested and didn't feel relaxed at all. Xingyue, what's wrong? You've been packing for a few hours and your things haven't been touched. Jing Yunzhao asked with concern. Ren Xingyue smiled. I don't want to go back to the Zhou family. Zhou Meijun is dead, and my aunt is suspicious all day. She's always saying that I killed her because I coveted the Zhou family's assets. Jing Yunzhao choked for a moment. Mrs. Zhou's resentment was not unreasonable. Mrs. Zhou's younger brother was defeated by her. He was still in prison, and her daughter was dead. Since they were roommates, she would definitely implicate Ren Xingyue with her resentment. However, she didn't think she did anything wrong. Zhou Meijun's death was her own fault. As for Mrs. Zhou, she didn't teach her daughter well and wasn't a kind person. She was just a little timid. Otherwise, she wouldn't be any better than her daughter. Don't you have your own income now? In fact, you can rent a house outside, right? Jing Yunzhao asked again. Ren Xingyue shook her head. No, my uncle doesn't have any children. He's already raising me as his successor. If I were to live outside, he would definitely be very disappointed. Jing Yunzhao could tell that Ren Xingyue had strong self-control and was independent. She probably wasn't interested in the Zhou family's property. However, she had received her uncle's kindness for many years and couldn't repay kindness with evil. Xingyue, your uncle, hasn't had a child for so many years. Is there something wrong with his body? I know some medical skills. Do you want me to take a look? Jing Yunzhao thought about it and asked tentatively. Ren Xingyue and Hua Tianxian were both stunned. Ren Xingyue blushed. That's not very good, right? After all, isn't your boyfriend jealous? Why would I be jealous? Jing Yunzhao was a little puzzled, but he quickly reacted and was instantly speechless. Are you guys thinking the wrong way? Western medicine does take sperm for testing, but I don't need it. From a person's pulse, tongue, eyes, ears, mouth, and nose, you can almost see the functions of every part of the body. For example, the tongue, its meridians are directly or indirectly connected to the heart, liver, spleen, kidney, and many other organs. A normal person's tongue is soft and can move freely. It's light red in color, and the tongue is covered with thin, evenly grained, moderately dry white moss. Its shape is long and oval, and it's moderately fat and thin. The root of the tongue belongs to the kidney, which can reflect a person's reproductive function. Some people's tongues are light, especially the root of the tongue, which is lighter than normal, indicating that the kidney qi and kidney yang are insufficient. Chapter 939. Jing Yunzhao spoke frankly and with assurance, explaining everything in great detail, but the two of them were still confused by what they heard. You mean, unlike those hospitals, they don't need. Hua Tianxian paused and smiled awkwardly. If that's the case, it shouldn't be a problem to take a look, but Xingyu, I still have some confidence in this aspect. But if your uncle's condition is cured, then the one who will benefit from it would be your aunt. Jing Yunzhao didn't forget to remind her. I'm not afraid of that. My aunt is listless now and always makes trouble. My uncle is ready to divorce her, but he's not a particularly heartless person. When the time comes, he will buy a property and let someone take care of her, Ren Xingyue said. In fact, if her aunt didn't make trouble, with her uncle's personality, he would definitely feel sorry for his wife because of the pain of losing his daughter and brother. It was impossible for him to divorce her. However, her aunt was selfish. She always felt that everyone owed her and Zhou Meijun. She didn't think about whether there was a problem with her education over the years. Although her uncle was a little weak, he wasn't stupid. Over the years, he had done a lot for his wife and daughter, and he usually doted on them. Now, her aunt was complaining that he wavered and didn't give the property to Zhou Meijun. How could he not be disappointed? Jing Yunzhao nodded. Ren Xingyue's uncle was young. Her aunt gave birth to Zhou Meijun when she was in her teens, and now she was less than 40 years old. Ren Xingyue's uncle was about the same age. Let's talk about it after your uncle's divorce, just in case, Jing Yunzhao said. If he was cured before the divorce, no matter if he was born with his first wife or with another woman, she would be disgusted. After the divorce, it would be different. If he was free, there wouldn't be any moral problems. Moreover, the Zhou family situation wasn't bad. It wouldn't be difficult for him to find a good wife. Jing He, you really are a little expert at home. You can solve any problem. If I have a headache or fever in the future, I don't need to look for others. You're enough. Hua Tianxian changed into new clothes and stood in front of her leather suitcase, which was worth more than 100,000 yuan, dazzling. I can solve some problems, but not others. Jing Yunzhao teased and said, for example, your instructor Qi. Even if I put a knife to his neck, he wouldn't be willing to work for your family, so don't make things difficult for me next time. Jing Yunzhao shook her head. Over the past few days, Hua Tianxian had asked her to get Qi Zhong to appear. Why are you talking about him? You're so annoying. Hua Tianxian immediately became listless. Since she was young, she had never encountered any setbacks. But now, Qi Zhong was like a tall mountain in front of her that she could not cross no matter how hard she tried. She originally thought that Qi Zhong also had some feelings for her, but after knowing him for so long, she became more and more disappointed. Qi Zhong was a person with a strong sense of responsibility. He was an iron-blooded man with dignity and rationality. Although he treated her differently during the military training, now that she thought about it, it was all because she was Jing Yunzhao's roommate. In fact, Qi Zhong treated Jing Yunzhao differently, not her. Every time he saw her gorgeously dressed and said those words of dissatisfaction, it was not because he was jealous, but because he felt that she was an arrogant young lady and was afraid that she would lead Jing Yunzhao astray. She didn't say some things directly, not because she didn't know, but because she also had dignity. I sent him a message yesterday and told him that I'll have a blind date with a few boys from my uncle's family during the holidays. I also told him the specific time. If he doesn't come, I'll find a suitable match and get engaged. Hua Tianxian lowered her head and touched her nails. Chapter 940. Jing Yunzhao and Ren Xingyue were stunned by Hua Tianxian's words. Hua Tianxian had just become an adult. Wasn't it a little too early for her to be thinking about getting engaged? Seeing the shock in their eyes, Hua Tianxian smiled and said, "Do you think it's so easy to be the eldest daughter of the Hua family? My parents don't have any other children. I'm the only one. My life has to be completely stable and follow the rhythm set by them. I want to get engaged now, get married when I'm of age, and have an heir as soon as possible. That's what I want to do." "But don't you like Instructor Qi very much?" Ren Xingyue frowned. "I know in my heart that liking someone and living a life are two different things. Someone like Qi Zhong. I can't control him. If he loves me very much, I might be able to fight for him. But the truth is that I'm thinking too much. He won't do anything for me. How can I fight against my parents for him? Besides, everything I have now is given to me by my parents. As a person, we should know how to repay kindness. I understand this. Qi Zhong's job is special. Maybe he's in a high position, but judging from his personality, he's not the kind of person who would take advantage of others. In other words, even if we really get together, he won't use his identity to open a path for the Hua family. I, on the other hand, have to worry about him being in danger one day. When I was very young, my parents told me that being together is no different from doing business. If you only invest and don't get any returns, of course, the business won't be able to continue. And if you work on projects that you're not suitable for and can't control, it's the same. In the end, you'll end up with nothing. If you have to choose one of the two, you have to choose the one that you're good at and can control. Hua Tianxian had a flamboyant smile on her face, but what she said surprised Jing Yunzhao. She and Li Xiaoyun had always thought that Qi Zhong and Hua Tianxian were a good match, but only in terms of personality. But now, it seemed that they hadn't seen what Hua Tianxian cared about the most before. The education she had received and the things she had experienced since she was a child had completely determined her future. As the daughter of the Hua family, she had enjoyed the kind of privilege and naturally had to bear the responsibility. She would not be a moth to a flame for a man. If Qi Zhong heard what you said, he might be very surprised and treat you differently, Jing Yunzhao said. Silly, Jing. Although I don't have much experience in love, I've seen a lot of it. When a man sees too many little unlovable women, he'll be interested in independent and self-reliant women. When he's used to seeing arrogant and despotic women, then sensible and steady women will have another kind of fatal temptation. But even if these two situations are reversed, it's still the same. Therefore, they only like one word, fresh. If you can see through it and think it through, it means that your feelings are not as strong as they used to be, Hua Tianxian continued. Suddenly, she seemed to have become a master of love. Jing Yunzhao pursed his lips and felt that it made sense. You're right, Jing Yunzhao admitted. But there's one kind of person who's an exception. Hua Tianxian stared at her mysteriously and smiled. After she finished speaking, she dragged her suitcase out of the door. Her body twisted like a snake. Jing Yunzhao was a little confused by her first half of the sentence. But when she thought about it, Li Xiaoyun's figure appeared in her mind. Yes, what she said was right, but it only applied to some people. She and Li Xiaoyun should belong to the minority. She was calm enough, and so was Li Xiaoyun. They stood in their respective positions and didn't disturb each other, but they involved each other. Neither of them thought of getting anything in return from the other. They just did what they wanted to do. Chapter 941. Jing Yunzhao's lips curled into a gentle smile. Ren Xingyue was stunned for a moment. She suddenly felt as if it was just a flash in the pan. Hua Tianxian and Yao Baobao left. Jing Yunzhao and Ren Xingyue didn't stay for long either. They each went their own way. Once they reached the door, Jing Yunzhao suddenly froze. As soon as she appeared, 4 people got out of the 4 cars at the door and looked at her. The 4 of them happened to be in 4 different directions. When they saw each other's movements, they were all stunned. Jing Yunzhao pursed her lips and watched as the 4 people walked over. Li Xiaoyun, who was standing in front of her, looked like he was stepping on a cloud. His aura wasn't weak at all, and he had a smile on his face. Pak Yuan, who was on the left, looked a little confused, but he was calm. Su Wenqing, who was on the right, stared at Li Xiaoyun with a serious expression. As for the class representative, Han Nan, who didn't understand the situation at all, was a little confused. Han Nan was closer, so he didn't pay much attention to the others. He stepped forward and said, Jing Yunzhao, we have a car coming to pick you up. I was wondering. Are you going to Yang Province? Do you want me to ask Mom and Dad to send you there? He smiled shyly and was about to bend down to help Jing Yunzhao carry her luggage. No need. I'm not going back to Yang Province for the time being. Jing Yunzhao said politely and avoided the topic. The only person she couldn't let go of in Huaning County was Grandpa Gon. However, she had already called him 2 days ago and told him that she had found her biological grandfather and uncle. This time, she would be staying in Jingdu for the new year. She also told him that she would let Su Chu and Gon Jinchen play at her house for a few days before the new year and come to her birthday party. Han Nan froze for a moment, but then he said happily, You're staying in Jingdu. Then where are you going? It'll be more convenient for me to send you there. If you don't have a place to stay, you can. Stay at my house for the time being. My parents are in the car right now. They like you very much. Sorry, there's no need, Jing Yunzhao said immediately. At this time, Jing Yunzhao was already a little unhappy, obviously showing the intention to resist. Jing Yunzhao, what's wrong with me? Han Nan's hands drooped, and his eyes darkened. At the side, Li Xiaoyun and the other two also heard this sentence. Their footsteps paused, and the corner of Li Xiaoyun's mouth twitched. His eyes were slightly gloomy. Ah Zhao. Li Xiaoyun stepped forward, grabbed Jing Yunzhao's shoulder, and pulled him into his embrace. Looking at Han Nan, the corners of his mouth curled up. Your little classmate? Yes, our class monitor. Jing Yunzhao nodded. Oh, class monitor. Li Xiaoyun snorted and patted Han Nan's shoulder. Not bad. With that, he swept past Han Nan and reached out to pick up Jing Yunzhao's luggage. Han Nan wasn't short, but he wasn't outstanding either. He was between 1.75 and 1.8 meters tall. Li Xiaoyun, on the other hand, was 1.85 meters tall. Not only was he tall, but his appearance was also outstanding. In front of him, Han Nan was instantly overshadowed. It was precisely because he had opened his mouth to say, not bad, that Han Nan felt even more embarrassed. This man in front of him didn't even put him in his eyes. Who are you? Han Nan mustered up his courage and asked. Me? I'm Ah Zhao's fiancé. You have a problem with that? Li Xiaoyun chuckled, but it made Han Nan's entire body tense up. Han Nan subconsciously took a step back, his face pale. He then looked at the two men who were closing in on him, and his face became even worse. He even felt like his heart had been turned green. He looked at Jing Yunzhao in disappointment, then turned around and ran back to the car. Chapter 942. After Han Nan left, the atmosphere between the three became even more awkward. Pak Yuan was older than Su Wenqing by 3 or 4 years, but for some reason, he felt slightly nervous in front of the other two. Chief Jing. Pak Yuan cleverly chose the most polite form of address. Normally, Pak Yuan would call her Yun Zhao in private. At first, Jing Yunzhao treated him like an uncle, but later, Pak Yuan didn't like it because it sounded old, so he changed the way he addressed him and recognized him as his older brother. But at the time, she didn't know she had an uncle, so her age and seniority were a bit strange. When Pak Yuan called him Chief Jing, Su Wenqing let out a sigh of relief and began to focus on Li Xiaoyun. Who are you? Su Wenqing spoke first. Li Xiaoyun. Second Uncle Su, nice to meet you. Li Xiaoyun's lips curved. He looked very polite, but it didn't feel like he had any intention of lowering his head. Li Xiaoyun. Su Wenqing frowned. He felt that this name was very familiar. After thinking carefully, he remembered that he seemed to have heard his older brother mention this name before, but he couldn't remember what it was specifically about. When did you become Xiao Zhao's fiancé? Mr. Li, I hope you won't ruin her reputation, Su Wenqing spoke again. His face was full of displeasure, but his eyes were already sizing up Li Xiaoyun. His style was low-key and gentlemanly. His clothes were expensive but not gaudy. They complemented his figure and could be considered perfect. Appearance. Su Wenqing's eyes flashed. He sighed inwardly. He couldn't compare. Their figures were about the same, but Li Xiaoyun seemed to have a bit more strength. As a man, he felt a sense of danger just by looking at him. However, although the overall rating was high, the last one was even higher. That was the degree of danger. At this moment, Li Xiaoyun smiled. Zhao and I have known each other for a long time before second Uncle Su, and I have already received grandfather's approval. My goal is to marry her and spend the rest of my life with her. Naturally, it is more appropriate to call her fiancé. Second Uncle Su, you don't know much about Zhao's past. You can go back and ask grandfather. These few simple words instantly made Su Wenqing's face turn green. Jing Yunzhao snickered in his heart. In the past, Li Xiaoyun only called his grandfather Elder Su. Now, in front of his second uncle, he even called him grandfather in advance. Second uncle, he is my man. I hope you can agree. Jing Yunzhao held Li Xiaoyun's arm and said to Su Wenqing. Suddenly, Su Wenqing felt a blow in his heart. It was a critical blow, a blow to his heart. He had finally found his niece, but she had already found her other half. He had yet to experience the feeling of raising a niece, but this person had already become someone else's. His heart ached. Pak Yuan coughed awkwardly. Who is he? Is he the general manager of your pharmaceutical company? Su Wenqing found a way out for himself and asked. No, this is my elder brother, Pak Yuan. Jing Yunzhao told him the truth. Pak Yuan had managed the company for her for 3 years. He had always put her first and helped her a lot. She couldn't ignore her previous relatives just because she had a biological uncle. Moreover, Big Brother Bai did love her as if she was his biological sister. He had also helped her in her previous life. Su Wenqing's mouth twitched fiercely. Double critical blow. Xiao Zhao. Your birthday is just around the corner. Do you still have any elders who treat you well? Do you want to invite them over? Su Wenqing thought about it and asked again. Since she was going to be provoked, she might as well accept it once and for all. Otherwise, she would feel that she had been separated from him again. Chapter 943. Su Wenqing's face was filled with anticipation, while Pak Yuan was touched by Jing Yunzhao's greeting. Li Xiaoyun stood to the side without saying anything, but it was clear that he had won the first round of competition with his second uncle. I also have a god-grandfather who loves me a lot, Jing Yunzhao added. In terms of god relatives, the only ones left were Grandpa Gon and Pak Yuan. Grandpa. Su Wenqing thought about it. Grandpa Gon was an elder after all, so it was still acceptable. At the very least, it was more acceptable than the other two in front of him. Su Wenqing's face was full of emotions as he glanced at Pak Yuan. His attitude was still polite, but when he looked at Li Xiaoyun, his eyes seemed to burst into flames. Only in front of Jing Yunzhao, he restrained himself. Since you're a god relative, you should interact more in the future. Remember to tell your god-grandfather about the birthday banquet. It's best if you invite him over so that the two families can get to know each other, Su Wenqing said. Although he was jealous of his niece's closeness to others, he also felt guilty. If they had found her earlier, she wouldn't have to rely on others. Jing Yunzhao's god-grandfather had taken care of her on behalf of them, so it was only right for them to thank him. Jing Yunzhao didn't want Grandpa Gon to come all the way here because of his old age, but after hearing Su Wenqing's words, he felt that it made sense and nodded. Uncle, take my luggage and go back first. Xiaoyun, you too. I have something to discuss with Brother Bai, Jing Yunzhao said in the next moment. Pak Yuan came to the capital because of her suggestion. In the past half a year, Pak Yuan had been expanding their factory due to their increasing sales. Now, the factory was more than 200,000 square meters, and they had invested more than 1 billion yuan, making them one of the most influential enterprises in the Yang province. However, because Jing Yunzhao wasn't in the Yang province all this time, most of the time, he was only responsible for making decisions. However, the fact that Yuling Wines could be so successful was mainly due to the connections she had built up over the past 2 years. Furthermore, with the Tang family's cooperation, it was naturally smooth sailing. However, Jing Yunzhao did not intend to stop there. What she wanted was not a company, but a large group. Now, she had asked Pak Yuan to come to Jingdu. On one hand, it was to plan for a branch company. On the other hand, it was also to acquire some companies with potential. However, she still had memories of her previous life. Although she was in prison, she had seen the news. She already had a target to acquire, but she had to take it step by step. At this moment, when Jing Yunzhao spoke, Su Wenqing looked at Pak Yuan with a stifled heart. However, Jing Yunzhao simply did not have the ability to refuse. Fortunately, Li Xiaoyun was also rejected by her, which made Su Wenqing, her second uncle, feel a lot better. Li Xiaoyun was clear about Pak Yuan's other identity. Of course, he would not say much and simply responded. However, a second before Jing Yunzhao and Pak Yuan got in the car, his thin lips came close to her forehead and gently touched her. Jing Yunzhao's face was faintly red before she got in the car. Su Wenqing was left fuming with anger. He glared at Li Xiaoyun. "You stay away from her." Su Wenqing was extremely dissatisfied. He wished he could hit him. Jing Yunzhao did not even resist him as an uncle. What kind of charm did this man have to make her let down all her guard against him? "Second uncle, that's my future wife. It's not normal to stay away from her, right?" Li Xiaoyun's mouth was slanted. The smile was thick, with a bit of gentle evil. Su Wenqing coldly snorted, "Xiao Zhao is young and easily deceived. In the past, there was no elder to help her, but in the future, there will be. Whether you can be her future husband is still uncertain." Chapter 944. Su Wenqing had almost thrown Li Xiaoyun into the cold palace at this time. He directly determined that Li Xiaoyun was a playboy who had bad intentions and abducted little girls. He looked down on Li Xiaoyun condescendingly and tried to make Li Xiaoyun retreat. "Whether she will marry me in the future is not up to you, second uncle. You might as well go back and ask Grandpa. I don't know if he is on your side or mine." Li Xiaoyun's eyes were dark and there was a chilling aura around him. For the past 2 years, he had been absolutely unrespectful to the old man. The old man knew better than anyone else who was worthy of Jing Yunzhao in this world. Even though that old man sometimes found him to be an eyesore, it was only because of his small temper. When it came to Jing Yunzhao, the old man's thoughts were clearer than anyone else's. He could see that Jing Yunzhao was good to him. "Don't talk about Grandpa Li. Besides, I didn't agree to you calling me second uncle." Su Wenqing was about to spit out blood. "Whether you agree or not, second uncle can't run away." Li Xiaoyun continued to smile. After knowing that Jing Yunzhao was indeed related to the Su family, he immediately investigated the 2 uncles of the Su family. According to what they had done, he knew them very well. After all, Su Yuantek was a little old. He was more mature, focused on benefits, and focused on ability. If he wanted to satisfy him, he had to follow the path of strength. He did not have to worry about this at all. The Li family was a military family and did not lack power and financial resources. Their background would satisfy him. Moreover, he had a place in the military. Naturally, there was no need to talk about influence. In terms of power, connections, and even influence, Su Yuantek might not win against him. As for Su Wenqing, after all, he was young. He was in the business world and had not experienced many big crises. Therefore, he was still full of edges and corners. To deal with people like him, going along with his hair would only make him more arrogant. Even if he was really capable, he would look down on him more and more. Therefore, he had to use force to smooth out his temper. Although he was 4 years younger than Su Wenqing, in terms of boldness, Su Wenqing was no match for him. Ever since he was a teenager, he had lived a dangerous life that was different from others. He had done hundreds of missions and spent most of his time fighting. What kind of people had he not seen? Su Wenqing was indeed outstanding and capable enough, but he lacked one thing, and that was his ups and downs. Perhaps after a few more years, Su Wenqing would become even stronger, and his mind would become more stable than it was now. Li Xiaoyun's gaze made Su Wenqing feel strange. All these years, he had always looked at others with a scrutinizing gaze. No one had ever dared to look at him like that. However, he felt a kind of pressure from Li Xiaoyun. The other party was clearly very young. Thinking of this, a glimmer of light flashed across Su Wenqing's eyes. He suddenly remembered the name Li Xiaoyun, but he instantly frowned in disbelief. Li Xiaoyun was the grandson of the god of war, Li Junwei. He was older than him by a few years, so he had heard of many of his deeds. When Li Xiaoyun was born, he was raised by Li Junwei. Later, he went to the army in the north. It was said that he grew up drinking wolf's milk. Since elementary school, he had been learning how to walk and hunt. However, after staying in the army for a few years, Li Junwei found a martial arts expert he knew in the past and let Li Xiaoyun become his disciple. Then, he lived the life of a master for a few years. The reason why his story spread was that when Li Xiaoyun was sent away by Li Junwei, the Li couple caused a ruckus for a period of time. Many people had heard of it. The old man had also said in front of him that Li Junwei had guts and a temper. He was a person who was rarely open-minded. Chapter 945. During Li Xiaoyun's apprenticeship, the old master of the Li family searched for all kinds of talents and sent them to him. Therefore, some people said that Li Xiaoyun not only knew martial arts, but also had a good understanding of firearms, knew the art of war, and was good at scheming. The old master even joked that Li Junwei was grooming his grandson to become the new god of war. However, at that time, many people thought that Li Junwei's action was superfluous. He was just torturing his grandson. After all, if it was in ancient times, Li Xiaoyun would definitely be famous if he had the ability. But in modern times, it was impossible. Li Xiaoyun's glory lasted until he was about 16 years old. Then, there was suddenly not much news about him. Li Junwei also rarely mentioned him in front of outsiders. Slowly, he disappeared from the memories of the young people of his generation. Back then, some of his friends joked that old Master Li might have raised his grandson into a David. The corner of Su Wenqing's mouth twitched. He had once sympathized with this kid for having such an unreliable grandfather, but at that time, he didn't know that one day, this person would stand in front of him and become Su Wenqing's nephew. Li Junwei from the Li family is your grandfather? Su Wenqing asked after a while. If that was the case, then Li Xiaoyun was really a noble young master. Although the Li family was not as powerful as the Su family, which had been passed down for thousands of years, it was very famous now. That's right, Li Xiaoyun replied frankly. The way Su Wenqing looked at Li Xiaoyun had changed a little. It turned out that the abnormal young man who had attracted a lot of attention back then was the man in front of him. However, it was a pity that his reputation was from his youth. Now, he was probably a hedonistic young master, right? Even if you are from the Li family, it is impossible to change my opinion. It is too early for Xiao Zhao to talk about love. In the future, I will not object to her meeting more people. If you use the identity of the Li family to suppress her, just try it. Su Wenqing immediately threatened. Li Xiaoyun glanced at him, speechless. Second uncle, although it makes me a little uncomfortable to let her get to know other people, I have absolute trust in Ah Zhao. You can give it a try. If you succeed, then you can say whatever you want. Li Xiaoyun raised his eyebrows and shook his head secretly. He walked towards his car. How much effort did he put in to get Ah Zhao to treat him differently these past few years? If Su Wenqing could casually find someone to do it, then even if he succeeded, he wouldn't feel wronged. Jing Yunzhao's heart was like a pool of stagnant water. Its surroundings were sealed, and there was no wind or rain. Nothing from the outside could enter it at all. He had tried his best to make her feel a little bit. To be able to do this, firstly, he had the ability. Secondly, he was worthy of Ah Zhao's taste. As for other people, whether it was in terms of appearance, family background, or temperament, it was unlikely that she could find someone who was compatible with her. Although there were many young masters of noble families who were of the same age as her, there was absolutely no one else who could give her absolute freedom and protection. Li Xiaoyun's back was tall and straight. Even if his face couldn't be seen, his figure attracted the attention of many women. Su Wenqing frowned and felt a little awkward. This time, he was going against Li Xiaoyun. Didn't he say that he could try? In that case, he wouldn't be polite. There were so many good young men in the capital. He didn't believe that no one could make his niece's heart move. In order to prevent Yun Zhao from following her mother's footsteps, it was better for this man to be more careful. When Su Wenqing angrily returned to the Su family, Jing Yunzhao and Pak Yuan found a restaurant to sit down and chat. Chapter 946. Why do you think so highly of this internet company? To be honest, the internet giants are already on the rise. It's fine to be small, but it's difficult to be big. Moreover, they will definitely be suppressed. Although it won't cost much to acquire this company, I'm more optimistic about these companies that are already established. Pak Yuan took the information from Jing Yunzhao and was puzzled. It was not hard to understand why she wanted to go into internet technology. After all, she was young and had more contact with the internet. However, it would be difficult to get a share of the profits from those giants. I have some understanding of this company. Their team is very capable. Brother Bai, their company's situation isn't too good. You can go and observe first. Jing Yunzhao suggested. Actually, the reason why she took a fancy to this company was because she had seen reports in prison in her previous life. Because there was no entertainment in prison, she remembered all the newspapers and news that she had read very clearly. In her previous life, this company couldn't survive in the country. No one saw the potential of this company. In the end, the company was invested in by a foreign businessman. Later on, the things that they developed were highly valued. However, the money was earned by someone else. After the investor earned the money, he scolded the Chinese for being stupid and had no foresight. This caused many people to be angry and regretful. She wouldn't easily snatch something that belonged to someone else unless she had a good reason. As for the company that she wanted to invest in the future, she didn't doubt her and Pak Yuan's ability. Even without the experience of her previous life, they would still be able to make the best decision. At this time, seeing that Jing Yunzhao was insistent, Pak Yuan was curious about this company. I have already chosen the location of the branch company. Take a look. Pak Yuan continued to the next item. Jing Yunzhao's face was serious. However, she was very satisfied with Pak Yuan's choice. And it's pretty good. The location was good and the area was big enough. In addition, they were preparing to open a few more franchise stores in Jingdu. The planning was very good and the accounts were very clear. However, Yunzhao, you can't always hide your identity as the boss, right? I'm going to hold a press conference to explain it. At the same time, it can also hype up the company. When it's popular enough, we'll reveal your identity. What do you think? Pak Yuen asked. If it was in the past, it wouldn't be a big deal even if Pak Yuen said that he wasn't the boss. However, it was different now. Yuling Wine. Yuling Wines wasn't listed yet, so he didn't have to worry about the stock price. The center of power seemed to be under his control, but without Jing Yunzhao, the company wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Now that the company's employees and structure had stabilized, revealing her identity wouldn't affect the company much. It would only shock the world. So fast. Jing Yunzhao furrowed her brows. Once it was made known to the outside world, his peaceful days would be over. Not soon. Aren't you going to be an adult soon? The time is just right. But don't worry, I'll restrain myself and try not to expose your information. Pak Yuen smiled and looked at Jing Yunzhao with pride. He didn't expect that he would be so loyal to a little girl like Jing Yunzhao. Although she was much younger than him, she had countless shining points that he couldn't compare to. Okay, we'll do as you say. Jing Yunzhao responded. The tea in front of her was steaming. Then she said, as for the tea house, let Chu Rong contact the tea garden and register the company. The tea house had always been stocked by the space, but this method couldn't last long. Therefore, it was best to find the tea garden. Yuling Wine would also be divided into two small companies. One would specialize in fruit wine and beverages, and the other would develop medicinal wine and health products. When everything was ready, it would be merged with the newly acquired company and Yunling Medicine into the same group. Chapter 947. Jing Yunzhao had already decided on her future path. Pak Yuen had realized this from the moment he met her. As the number one official by her side, his responsibility was to follow and obey. The lights in this Western restaurant were dim and stylish. Under this atmosphere, Jing Yunzhao's beautiful appearance and unique temperament were even more prominent. Xiao Bai. When the dishes were all served, a figure walked past and suddenly called out. Jing Yunzhao and Bai Yuan subconsciously raised their heads to take a look, only to see that it was a man in his 40s. He looked a bit mature, but his eyes were a bit triangular, and he didn't seem too honest. Jing Yunzhao had never seen this person before, but she could see that Pak Yuan's expression immediately became serious. His entire person even seemed to be suppressing his anger. In these 3 years, she had never seen Pak Yuan like this. That feeling of hatred almost burst out from her body. She couldn't suppress it even if she wanted to. After thinking carefully, Jing Yunzhao thought of an identity. Back then, she had met Pak Yuan because he had suffered a setback in the capital and returned home disheartened. That was how they had met by chance. And the setback he had suffered in the capital was because of a man. That man was his boss back then. He had secretly had an affair with his wife, who he had been with since university. Even his twin sons were that boss's. Boss Fan. Pak Yuan was gloomy. The joints of his hands holding the knife and fork were white. The metal in his hands seemed to be bent by him. Xiao Bai, I heard you went back to your hometown. Why are you back now? Boss Fan looked down at the man in front of him and laughed. Is it because you can't survive? Seeing that we used to be friends, do you want me to find you a job? But to be honest, your ability is average. I'm afraid you can't sit in a high position. How about this? Come to my company and start as a small employee. What do you think? Boss Fan smiled. His eyes were even more wretched. Jing Yunzhao frowned in dissatisfaction. Pak Yuan put down his knife and fork. He tried hard to control his emotions and slowly relaxed his expression. Boss Fan doesn't need to worry. Pak Yuen said as if he didn't care. But for any man, there weren't many who really didn't care. Pak Yuen's original wife was his university classmate. After many years of feelings, Pak Yuen still missed her and hadn't found another one. Boss Fan smiled proudly and looked at Pak Yuen with a face full of disdain. Xiao Bai, you're a person, but why do this? Director Fan spoke and turned to look at Jing Yun Zhao. With this one look, his eyeballs were about to pop out. This little sister is. Seeing Director Fan's eyes, Bai Yuan was immediately enraged. Fan Liqin, take back your disgusting gaze. I haven't caused trouble for you all these years not because I'm afraid of you. Oh. Then what is it? Xiao Bai, who doesn't know how you got kicked out of the capital back then? Who is this little girl to you? Is she your little sister or lover? As Boss Fan spoke, he put his hands into his pockets and said condescendingly, Little girl, Pak Yuen is a dog that I personally chased out of the capital. You wouldn't be so stupid as to follow him, would you? Jing Yun Zhao furrowed her brows and sneered, President Fan, is the reason why your words are so obnoxious because of the single character name? When Fan Liqin heard this, his expression turned ugly. You have quite a sharp mouth. Boss Fan mocked, then continued, What do you see in Xiao Bai? If it's not money, then is it people? He's already in his 30s. He doesn't have money, but he's beautiful. If you weren't cheated by him, then what was? I'm kindly reminding you, don't be ungrateful. Chapter 948. Although it had been 3 years, Fan Liqin's memory of Pak Yuen was still fresh. It had to be said that Pak Yuen was very capable. He had climbed from a university graduate to the position of deputy general manager of his company in just a few years. At that time, he had been praised by many people. They all said that if it wasn't for his ordinary family background and lack of experience, he definitely wouldn't have had such achievements. Pak Yuen had done a lot of things for him and brought a lot of benefits to his company, but it also made him feel a sense of crisis. He was in the limelight too much. Many people secretly compared him, the boss, to Pak Yuen, an employee. He knew all of this, so of course, he couldn't tolerate it. So he stole Pak Yuen's most proud wife and son. So what if he was outstanding? In the capital, he still had to take a loan to buy a house. His wife still despised him for being poor and couldn't give him a happy life. After he was fired, he still had to bow down to his connections. He didn't even have the ability to make a comeback. Speaking of which, Bai Yuan's wife was a great beauty, but it was a pity that he already had a wife. It was impossible for him to divorce and remarry. The only thing he lacked was a son. Therefore, after Bai Yuan left, he listened to his wife's wishes and openly brought the 2 children home to raise. However, he only left a sum of money for the woman. After that, they only met a few times. However, every time they met, she would cry endlessly for a son, which annoyed him to no end. As a result, it had been nearly a year since he last saw her. Fan Liqin thought of the past and became even more proud. Self-righteous. Jing Yun Zhao, on the other hand, only laughed lightly, as if she had heard something that made her want to vomit. Pak Yuen always felt that Jing Yun Zhao knew who the person in front of him was. He didn't have the slightest bit of puzzlement or curiosity. I'm self-righteous. Little girl, I'm doing this for your own good. This is my business card. Little White isn't as reliable as you think. When you discover his true colors, you can give me a call. After Boss Fan finished speaking, a piece of paper appeared on Jing Yunzhao's desk. Jing Yunzhao saw the name of the company on the business card. It was not unfamiliar to him. This Fan Liqin managed quite a few companies, none of which were small in scale. He was also a well-known figure in the capital. However, He owed everything he had to his father's generation. Otherwise, this kind of idiot would not have the wealth he had today. At this moment, Fan Liqin was extremely confident, and he left with a radiant face. Jing Yunzhao glanced at Pak Yuan and said, "Brother Bai, this Fan Liqin isn't at the point where we can't shake him. Although Jade Spirit Wine's forces are all in Serene City, it doesn't mean that they don't have any influence. You will definitely meet him again in the future. I don't mind you using Jade Spirit Wines as your backing to slap this boss Fan's face. I even want you to slap him a few more times for me." Pak Yuan was mature and steady, but he was not without guts. The reason why he did not speak earlier was not because he was afraid of Fan Liqin. It was more likely because he could not perform well. Bring out his name. He was afraid that he would feel that he had betrayed her trust and was afraid that she would think that he was doing this for personal gain. Forget it. What's the point of fighting with this kind of person? In short, I'm doing well now. Pak Yuan said. Jing Yunzhao shook his head silently. Brother Bai, is it because you haven't forgotten about the past that you have been keeping a distance from Xiang Jin? When Pak Yuan heard this, his face revealed a hint of panic. He did not know what to do. You, Chief Jing. He immediately became serious and changed the way he addressed him. Or do you think that the two of you who manage Jade Spirit Wines together will make me fearful? Brother Bai, don't doubt people if you don't use them. Besides, you know that this company is different in my hands. Why would I suspect you? Chapter 949. Jing Yunzhao's direct and clear attitude made Pak Yuan stunned, and at the same time, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He had long known that his boss was not an ordinary person and had very good eyesight. How could she not see the situation between him and Xiang Jin? Just as she said, although he and Xiang Jin were now the general manager and vice president, it was impossible for them to do anything behind Jing Yunzhao's back. After all, even if he really took over the company, it would be useless. Other than the contract they signed beforehand, the most important thing was that all the valuable things in Yuling Wine were in Jing Yunzhao's hands. Without Jing Yunzhao, the company was just an empty shell. Therefore, if he and Xiang Jin were together, there was nothing to avoid. However, after all, he worked for Jing Yunzhao and only wanted to handle her affairs wholeheartedly. He didn't want to use the name of work to do other things. Moreover, he really hadn't let go of the past. President Jing, you don't have to say any more. Xiang Jin is very good. Both of us have been hurt by our other halves. I also want to take care of her, but it's still difficult for me to make a decision now. Because he still had a knot in his heart that had not been untied. Jing Yunzhao raised an eyebrow. Big Brother Bai, as a man, you're decisive and bold enough at work, but when it comes to relationships, you can't cut the Gordian knot. If you can't let go of Xiang Jin, then you should think about how to face the past. What you said makes sense, but I haven't thought about it yet. Pak Yuan smiled bitterly. How could feelings be so easy to control? He had many memories with his ex-wife. Although she betrayed him, the memories were still there. Jing Yunzhao curled her lips. She could only say that she had tried her best. In the past 2 years, she had often met Xiang Jin. Every time Xiang Jin looked at Pak Yuan, the way she looked at him was different. At that time, she was slow to react in this aspect. Later, she only found out when Jing Fan, who lived with Xiang Jin, mentioned it. If the two generals could be together, she had no objections. Moreover, Xiang Jin had suffered a lot when she married a scumbag in the past. She should find a good man to entrust her life to. However, thinking of Jing Fan, Jing Yunzhao asked, "You should have seen Jing Fan often when you were in Ning City, right? How is that girl?" Jing Fan is very sensible. He's much braver than before and his grades have always been very stable. He often asks me when you're going back. I'm afraid he misses you. Pak Yuan laughed. Jing Yunzhao was only 2 years older than Jing Fan, but when he opened his mouth, he called her a little girl. However, it didn't sound strange at all. He was simply too mature. Back then, the Jing family had used a fake paternity test to make everyone know about it. The Jing family's parents went to jail. Other than Jing Fan, the other 2 children didn't have it easy. If Jing Fan hadn't been clear-headed and had a gentle personality, he might not have been so lucky now. Jing Yunzhao nodded. She helped Jing Fan because she felt that Jing Fan was similar to her in the past. Her parents should be out of prison soon, right? Jing Yunzhao asked. Almost. I've asked around. Those 2 people are doing well in prison. Their sentences aren't long to begin with. With the reduced sentence, they'll be out in half a year. However, when Jing Fan finishes her university exams and arrives in the capital, it'll be even more impossible for the couple to find her, Pak Yuan said. If the other party was really determined to find her, of course, they would be able to find her. After all, they were her biological parents. They could go to the police station to investigate. However, it was more difficult to find her specifically. Chapter 950. Jing Yunzhao felt that she had not done anything wrong to that family. She had already punished them. As long as they were well behaved and did not disturb her life, she would not do anything to them. As for Jing Fan, when he took her in, he made it clear to her that if she wanted to use everything she gave to help that pair of parents, she could only return to her original state and live the life she originally wanted to live. At this moment, Jing Yunzhao picked up the hot drink and drank a few mouthfuls. She put down the cup with a calm expression. After giving the necessary instructions, Jing Yunzhao and Pak Yuan got up and left. She was prepared to accompany Pak Yuan to see a house. Although Jing Yunzhao was Pak Yuan's boss, she could not keep giving her subordinates houses and cars. Otherwise, even a good person would feel tired. After all, if money came too easily, one's mentality would become more frivolous. The house in Ning City was bought by Jing Yunzhao, but it was also under her name. However, Pak Yuan had been coming to the capital more often recently and wanted to buy a quiet and good house for himself to settle down in the future. Yuling Wine's current center had moved a lot to the capital, so it was normal for him to have such thoughts. When Jing Yunzhao first came to the capital, she also wanted to buy a house. However, she was alone at that time and the school had dormitories, so there was no need at all. Later, Old Man Su followed, but he already had a place to stay. Now, with a house as big as the Su family's, there was no need for it. Whether it was a house or a car, she did not lack anything. As soon as the 2 of them left the restaurant, someone followed behind the car. The way the other party followed them was very calm. Not only Jing Yunzhao, but even Pak Yuan could sense it. If I'm not wrong, it should be Boss Fan's driver, Jing Yunzhao said. The other party's car was expensive and eye-catching. Before they left the restaurant, it had been parked at the entrance. Boss Fan looked like an extremely stingy man. It was rare to see Pak Yuan, so he definitely wouldn't let him go easily. It was normal for someone to follow him. Why don't we stop looking at houses today? Next time. Pak Yuan hesitated. Why not? Jing Yunzhao frowned. Let's follow, but let's buy something on the way. Pak Yuan was a little puzzled, but after Jing Yunzhao pointed out a destination, he could only follow Jing Yunzhao's instructions and did not think too much about it. Pak Yuan had already taken a fancy to a residential area. The environment was very good. Although the location was not the best, there was a nursing home and a park nearby. If he brought his parents over in the future, it would be convenient for the elderly to make friends. As for himself, he could eat and live in the company, so it did not matter. However, before going to the residential area, Jing Yunzhao first went to the nearby commercial streets. The streets were bustling and there were many shopping malls. After Jing Yunzhao bought a few pieces of clothing, he felt that it was about time and finally entered a jewelry store. Chief Jing. Pak Yuan was still confused. It had to be said that Jing Yunzhao understood these little things better. Why did Boss Fan send someone to follow him? Wasn't it because he wanted to know where he lived or where he went? After knowing this, what he wanted to do was to humiliate Pak Yuan. There was only one direct way to humiliate Pak Yuan, and that was to let Pak Yuan meet his ex-wife or former son. She had seen this kind of little trick countless times, so she understood it very well. Let me see this jade pendant. Jing Yunzhao pointed at a piece of jade on the counter. The salesperson immediately complied. Jing Yunzhao sat in front of the counter, his movements slow, as if he was waiting for something. Chapter 951. After a while, Jing Yunzhao put the jade back and looked for a few more pieces. The salespeople were somewhat dissatisfied, but on the surface, they still served him with a good attitude. Pak Yuan was just about to say a few words of advice when a man and a woman walked into the jewelry store. The other party seemed to be heading straight for Pak Yuan with a smile on their faces. At this time, Jing Yunzhao also took a few more glances at the woman beside Boss Fan. It had to be said that if she was younger, she would be considered a pretty girl from a humble family. However, she was already a woman in her 30s. Moreover, she had given birth to a child, so her face had some freckles and wrinkles. Her skin was not very tight. Although Jing Yunzhao did not know how to read faces, he could still feel that this woman seemed to like frowning. Between her eyebrows, there was a chuan pattern. Brother Fan, didn't you say you were bringing me to see my son? Why are we here? Before the woman could finish speaking, she raised her head and saw Pak Yuan not far away. Her face immediately turned pale, and the thin smile that she had squeezed out disappeared without a trace. Her shoulders were firmly clamped down by Fan Liqin. She could not break free at all. Or rather, even if she wanted to break free, she did not dare to. What's wrong? Seeing your old lover reminds you of the past. Fan Liqin coldly snorted. His smile widened, as if he had found something amusing. No, no. The woman hurriedly shook her head. Her body stuck to Fan Liqin's side, as if she was afraid that he would think that she was disloyal. Fan Liqin was very satisfied with Tan Shi's reaction. Thinking back, when he had taken a fancy to this woman, it had only aroused his desire to conquer her. He had also taken a fancy to her because she was Pak Yuan's woman. However, he had not expected this woman to be so righteous that she had given birth to twin sons for him in one go. Even his wife could not compare to this woman, which was why he had taken her seriously. After Pak Yuan left the capital, it didn't take long for him to grow tired of him. He had a lot of women around him, all of whom were beautiful and young. Those women were very sensible, unlike Tan Shi, who had been married and had given birth to a child. Her skin was dark yellow, and she was an unscrupulous businesswoman with ulterior motives. When she was with Pak Yuan, she was a treasure. Compared to other things, at least she was loyal and honest. However, after leaving Pak Yuan, she was completely different in his eyes. Therefore, after playing with her enough, of course, he would not care too much about her. He would just give her some money and send her away. Of course, since she had been his woman, it was fine for them to talk about old times occasionally. Just like now, when he thought of this person, he could immediately bring her here with a call. At this moment, Pak Yuen and Tan Shi both had ugly expressions on their faces. However, Jing Yunzhao believed that Pak Yuen's anger was because he still remembered the painful betrayal, and not because he still had feelings for her. As long as Pak Yuen appeared in the capital in the future, there was a possibility that these two people would meet. Rather than being humiliated when they met, it was better to take the initiative to scheme and make the other party suffer. Little Bai, I didn't think it would be such a coincidence to see you here again. Let me introduce you. This is Tan Shi. Oh, I almost forgot. You two know each other, and she's your ex-wife. Fan Liqin's voice was very loud, attracting everyone's attention. After he finished speaking, he didn't forget to pinch Tan Shi's face and fiercely kiss it. Even if she was his ex-wife, she was still a woman who had once shared a bed with him. Being treated like this by another man in front of so many people, it would be strange if he felt comfortable. Big brother Bai, look at this jade. It's so beautiful. Before Pak Yuen could say anything, Jing Yunzhao had already opened her mouth. She pointed at a single glass counter in the middle of the jewelry store, only to see an exquisite jade pendant on top of it. The carving was exquisite and had a bit of an ancient style. This jade was green without a trace of impurities, dazzling and eye-catching. Chapter 952. Pak Yuen looked in the direction that Jing Yunzhao was pointing at. He was also stunned, but at the same time, he knew that this jade must be expensive. Miss, you have good taste. This is the treasure of our branch. This jade was personally carved by a famous master. It is guaranteed to be the only one of its kind in the world. Not only that, but it is also a piece of top-grade glass-type imperial jade. The salesperson gave a simple introduction but did not state the price. However, her eyes revealed a look of admiration. Clearly, she was reminding Jing Yunzhao that this item was not cheap. However, Jing Yunzhao acted as if she did not understand. How much is this pendant? This blue butterfly pendant is priced at 19 million. The salesperson said. Jing Yunzhao nodded. This price was acceptable. One had to know that a glass-type imperial jade ring would probably cost a few million. Hua Tianxian had once said that there was a glass-type imperial jade necklace in Hua's jewelry. Her father had bought it from overseas and it was sold for more than 80 million. This was not even the most expensive item. The top-grade imperial jade could even be sold for hundreds of millions. Jing Yunzhao's attitude was a little strange. Boss Fan glanced at the jade and then looked at Pak Yuen with a mocking expression. Little girl, your big brother Bai can't afford this piece of jade. Let alone 19 million, I'm afraid he can't even fork out 1,900,000, right? Boss Fan's face was full of mockery. Jing Yunzhao glanced at the jade a few more times, as if she was reluctant to part with it. Her eyebrows furrowed slightly, and she asked Director Fan in a seemingly unconcerned manner, Director Fan is so confident, could it be that you can afford it? Fan Liqin choked on his words. Of course, he could afford it. However, 20 million was not a small amount. For a piece of jade, he had to see if it was worth it. While he was in a daze, Jing Yunzhao gave him a disdainful look. I thought Boss Fan could afford it. Jing Yunzhao snorted and continued, Brother Bai, how about I use the card you gave me to buy this piece of jade? Such a good thing, I really like it. When did Pak Yuen give her a card? Now that he heard her words, he understood what she meant. She was afraid of trouble and wanted him to gain face in front of Fan Liqin. Things like face no longer mattered to him. After all, his wife had been snatched away by Fan Liqin in the past. He had experienced something as embarrassing as that. Now, even if Fan Liqin continuously humiliated him, it was no big deal. However, even if he could tolerate it, Jing Yunzhao couldn't. She had a special trait, and that was that she was very protective of her own people. She would never allow anyone to invade or bully her people. Otherwise, she would make the other party pay back 10 times or even 100 times more. Ha, little beauty, your taste for a rich husband is too bad. Can Pak Yuan afford it? Back then, he was chased out of the capital by me. I'm afraid he only had a little money left on him. Even if I gave him a few million, he wouldn't be able to make a comeback in such a short time. Fan Liqin's heart was bursting with joy. After not seeing Pak Yuan for so long, he didn't think that he would be able to bring him so much fun. President Fan. Jing Yunzhao's face suddenly stiffened, looking extremely angry. Boss Fan, if you can't afford it, then don't be jealous of others. You keep saying that you chased Brother Bai out of the capital, but you can't even buy a small thing for the people around you. Look at this woman. Her clothes are old and her bag is also the last season model. Oh right, there's also the perfume on her body. It smells extremely bad. It's not something good at all, right? You talk as if you're very capable, but the truth is, you're just a liar, right? You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.